He was born blind. They called him broken. He called them dunderheads. Because this zero-filter badass just melted a city block, buried 50 villains with one stomp, and cooks all for one alive. This man has zero respect for everyone, and it's beautiful.
Welcome, legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
Izuku Midoriya came into the world screaming, which was normal. What was not normal was the way his eyes looked. Milky green. Unfocused. The kind of eyes that stared at everything and saw nothing. His mother, Izuku Midoriya, held him against her chest and sobbed the moment the doctor said the word blind. She sobbed harder when the second diagnosis came 4 years later. Quirkless. No quirk. No sight. A boy made of soft bones and bad luck. That was what they said. That was the story everyone tried to write for Izuku Midoriya before he even learned to tie his shoes, which he never did because he stopped wearing them entirely. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Izuku was 4 years old the first time the Earth spoke to him. He was at Aldera Municipal Park, the one with the rusted slide and the sandbox that smelled like old rain. He had his white cane in one hand and his other hand out in front of him, tapping along the concrete path because his mother was still at the bench and he wanted to feel the grass. He liked the grass. It was honest. It did not pretend to be anything other than what it was. He made it about 6 steps before a palm slammed into his chest. Where do you think you're going, blind kid? Katsuki Bakugo. 4 years old, already loud, already mean. Already convinced that the tiny explosions crackling in his palms made him a god among ants. Izuku stumbled backward but did not fall. He tilted his head. He could not see Bakugo, but he could hear him breathing, fast and excited, like a dog that found something to chew on. He could hear 2 other kids shuffling behind Bakugo, their sneakers scraping the pavement. I said, "Where are you going?" Bakugo shoved him again. Izuku hit the ground this time. His palms slapped into the dirt beside the path, fingers sinking into loose soil. His cane clattered away. The other kids laughed. "He can't even stand upright," one of them said. "Blind and useless," the other added. Bakugo crouched down. His voice was close, hot. His breath smelled like the yakisoba bread his mother packed. "You know what my quirk is? Explosions. You know what your quirk is? Nothing. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." The words landed. They always landed at that age. But something else happened at the same time. Something none of them expected. Something that would rewrite everything. Izuku's palms were in the dirt, and for the first time in his life, the dirt talked back. It started as a hum, a low vibration that crawled up through the soil, through his fingers, through his wrists, up his arms, and into the base of his skull. Suddenly, the blackness behind his eyes was not empty anymore. It was full of shapes, full of weight, full of information he had never had before. He could feel Bakugo's boots, 2 points of pressure, 17 inches apart, the left foot carrying more weight than the right. He could feel the 2 kids behind him, lighter, standing closer together, their weight shifting nervously. He could feel his mother on the bench 40 feet away, her legs crossed, her heartbeat steady because she had not seen the shove yet. He could feel an earthworm 3 inches below his right pinky curling through clay. He could feel the roots of the oak tree near the slide spreading underground like a web. He could feel everything. And inside his chest, something cracked open. Something old. Something that had been waiting since before he was born. Coiled up in his blood like a sleeping dragon. Anger. Not frustration. Not sadness. Pure white-hot, ground-shaking anger. Izuku pressed his palms flat into the dirt and pushed. The park buckled. There was no other word for it. The ground beneath them jumped like a living thing. A crack split the concrete path in half, jagged and deep, sprinting in both directions. The sandbox erupted, sand fountaining into the air. The rusted slide groaned, tilted, and collapsed sideways into a sinkhole that opened beneath it with a sound like tearing paper. The fence around the park bent inward. Every parked car on the adjacent street rocked on its suspension. Bakugo screamed. The ground beneath his feet split open and then snapped shut around his legs up to his knees. Stone and compacted earth squeezed his shins like a jaw. He could not move. He could not pull free. His tiny explosions popped against the rock and did absolutely nothing. The two kids behind him were on their backs, thrown flat by the shockwave, crying, and Izuku Midoriya stood up. Dirt fell from his hands. His milky green eyes stared forward, locked on nothing and everything at the same time. His bare toes, his shoes had been knocked off in the fall, gripped the broken ground. He was grinning. Not a nice grin. Not a child's grin. A grin that said, "I found it. I found the thing that makes me more than what you said I was." "Mommy!" Bakugo screamed. "Mom! He did something! Help!" Inko Midoriya was already sprinting across the park, eyes wide, tears streaming. She scooped Izuku up. The moment his feet left the ground, the grip on Bakugo's legs loosened. Bakugo yanked himself free and scrambled backward, eyes huge, snot running down his face. He stared at Izuku. Izuku, cradled in his mother's arms, tilted his head toward Bakugo. "Did you feel that, Sparky?" Izuku said. He was 4 years old, and the world had just lost its grip on him forever. The doctors had no explanation, because there was no explanation. Every test came back the same. No quirk factor, no quirk gene, no mutations. Nothing. "It's impossible," the specialist told Inko, flipping through charts. "He has no quirk. The seismic event at the park, we can't explain it. Perhaps a nearby quirk user." It was me. Izuku sat on the examination table, swinging his bare feet, picking at a loose thread on his shorts. "I did it," he said again. "The ground listens to me." The specialist looked at Inko. Inko looked at Izuku. Izuku looked at nothing, because he was blind, but his head was tilted toward the specialist's chest. "Your heartbeat just got faster," Izuku said. "You're scared of me." The specialist recommended therapy. Inko took Izuku home. That night, she sat him down at the kitchen table and held his hands. Her voice was shaking, but steady. "Izuku, what happened at the park? Can you do it again?" He nodded. "Show me." He pressed his bare foot to the kitchen floor. The tiles rippled, not breaking, rippling, like water. A small stone rose from a crack in the foundation, hovering at his eye level. He shaped it with his fingers without touching it, rolling it into a perfect sphere, then let it drop into his mother's palm. Inko stared at it. Then she looked at her son. "My baby," she whispered. "You're not broken. You never were." That was the night Inko Midoriya stopped crying about what her son didn't have and started paying attention to what he did. Here is what the world needs to understand about Izuku Midoriya's next 10 years, because they are the reason everything that follows was possible. He trained. Every single day. Alone. It started in the backyard. He was 5, stomping his feet in the garden, learning how to feel the vibrations return to him. He figured out that softer ground gave softer signals and harder ground gave sharper ones. He figured out that if he pressed his toes down and sent a pulse through the soil, it bounced off everything within range and came back to him like sonar. Distance, density, shape, movement, all of it painted in his mind in perfect detail. He called it seismic sense, because that is exactly what it was. By 6, he could feel everything within 100 meters. Every footstep, every heartbeat, every shifting muscle, every ant colony, every underground pipe. By 7, the range doubled. By 8, he realized something else. He was not just sensing the earth, he was commanding it. He could stomp his foot and send a ripple through the ground that cracked open sideways. He could press his palm to a rock wall and tear chunks out of it with his mind. He could raise stone columns from flat terrain. He could compress sand into solid rock. He could dig tunnels without a shovel. He could build walls faster than any construction crew. He was earthbending. And nobody taught him. Nobody could, because nobody in the history of this quirk-infested world had ever done what Izuku Midoriya was doing. This was not a quirk. There was no activation, no drawback, no genetic marker. It was something else, something deeper, something that connected him to the planet itself. He trained in forests, in riverbeds, in quarries he snuck into at night. He trained barefoot on every surface he could find: granite, limestone, sandstone, volcanic rock, clay, gravel, packed dirt, wet mud. Every material responded differently. Everyone taught him something. By 9, he found the caves. Deep in the mountains north of Musutafu, there was a network of tunnels that went down further than any map recorded. Izuku walked into them barefoot at 9 years old without a flashlight, because what would be the point, and descended for 3 days. He found the badger moles, massive, ancient creatures that lived in the deepest stone and navigated by vibration alone. Blind, like him. Powerful, like him. They had been bending Earth since before humans existed. They did not attack him. They felt him through the rock, and they recognized something. A kinship, a shared language written in tremors and pressure, and the heartbeat of the planet. Izuku lived with the badger moles for 2 months. His mother nearly had a heart attack, but he came back with a note carved into a stone tablet. "I'm fine, Mom. Learning. Be back soon. Love, Izuku." When he emerged from those caves, he was different. His earthbending had gone from powerful to masterful. He could raise walls of stone in a heartbeat. He could launch boulders the size of cars with a stomp. He could open sinkholes that swallowed buildings. He could create earthquakes localized to a single room. He could feel the heartbeat of a mouse from 200 meters away. His body had changed too, lean muscle packed onto a frame that moved with the balanced, grounded efficiency of someone who was always connected to the strongest thing in any room, the floor. But the caves gave him something else. At 10, he discovered metal. He was in a junkyard, walking through rows of crushed cars when he felt it, a hum inside the steel. Faint, almost invisible, but there, the trace of earth, ore, iron, the remnants of rock and minerals still embedded in every piece of metal around him. He pressed his palm to the hood of a wrecked sedan. The hood crumpled inward like tinfoil. He stepped back. He pressed his foot to the ground. He reached out with his sense, feeling through the concrete, through the rebar underneath, and he pulled. A steel rod tore itself out of the ground, bending like a snake, hovering in front of him, metal bending. He laughed so hard he scared every bird in a 3-block radius. Over the next 2 years, he perfected it. He could pull metal from walls. He could reshape steel beams. He could turn a chain link fence into a sphere the size of a marble. He could wrap metal around a target like a straitjacket. He could feel every nail, every pipe, every structural support in a building and rip them out like pulling threads from a sweater. Then, at 12, the last piece fell into place. Lava bending. He discovered it by accident. He was in an old quarry, pushing himself to compress rock harder than he ever had before. He squeezed a boulder between 2 walls of stone with so much force and friction that it began to glow. Red, orange, white. The boulder melted. Izuku stood over a pool of bubbling magma and felt its heat on his face. He reached out with his sense. The lava was still earth. Changed, superheated, liquid, but still earth. Still his. He raised his hand. The magma rose with it. From that day forward, Izuku Midoriya held 3 abilities that made him the most dangerous person his age, and possibly any age, on the planet. Earthbending, metal bending, lava bending, and a seismic sense so refined that lying to him was functionally impossible. By 14, Izuku Midoriya was 5'8", 155 pounds of dense, wiry muscle, and absolutely insufferable. He walked barefoot everywhere. Every surface was information. Every step was a sonar ping that told him more about his environment than a satellite could. He carried a cheap wooden walking stick sometimes, tucked under his arm or resting on his shoulder, because people expected a blind person to have one, and it amused him to play the part. The stick was a prop, a joke, a bit he committed to because it made the reveal funnier. His wardrobe was simple. Black pants that stopped mid-calf, never anything that covered his feet, a dark green tank top or an open jacket depending on the weather. His hair was wild, curly, going in every direction because he could not see it and did not care. His eyes were the milky green they had always been, and he had a habit of tilting his head when he focused his seismic sense like a wolf catching a scent he had spent a decade being told what he could not do. Blind. Quirkless. Helpless. So he decided very early that he would never let anyone else define him again. That decision turned into confidence. The confidence turned into arrogance. The arrogance turned into a personality so sharp it could cut glass. He did not mumble. He did not stutter. He did not back down, bow down, or quiet down. He said what he meant what he said. And if you did not like it, The ground beneath you would make the point for him. His mother loved him ferociously and worried about him constantly. He kissed her on the forehead every morning before school and told her, "Mom, I am the greatest earthbender in the world. Stop worrying." She would laugh and cry at the same time, which was her specialty. He had no friends. He did not need them. He had the earth. But he was about to walk into UA High School, and whether he wanted it or not, things were about to change. The morning of the UA entrance exam was warm. April, cherry blossoms doing their thing. The kind of morning that anime openings were made of. Izuku Midoriya stood at the base of the massive staircase leading up to UA's front gates, barefoot, his wooden walking stick resting on his right shoulder, his left hand in his pocket. His head was tilted slightly upward, not because he could see the building, but because he could feel it. The entire structure, every floor, every wall, every steel beam and concrete pillar and rebar skeleton. UA was a fortress, and its bones were singing to him through the ground. "Big place," he muttered. "Good foundation. Lot of metal. I like it." Students streamed past him on both sides, hurrying up the stairs. He felt every one of them. Their footsteps, their weight, their heartbeats. Most of them hammering with anxiety. Some were confident, a few were terrified. One, about 50 meters to his left, had a heartbeat so aggressive it practically had its own percussion section. Bakugo. Izuku grinned. He started up the stairs. He took his time, his bare feet pressed flat against each stone step, and with every step his map of the area sharpened. 1,216 students on the grounds. 47 staff members inside the building. 6 underground tunnels. A sewer line running east, and an ungodly amount of steel beneath the fake cityscape to the north, the exam arena. He was 3 steps from the top when a foot caught on the edge of the stair in front of him. Someone was falling. He felt it instantly. A shift in weight, a stumble, gravity taking over. A girl with a light frame about his height, falling forward toward the concrete. Izuku stamped his foot. A small shelf of stone jutted out from the step, catching the girl's shoe and steadying her mid-fall. She gasped, windmilled her arms, and found her balance. "What the?" She looked down at the stone that had appeared from nowhere, then turned around. Izuku was already walking past her. "You're welcome," he said without turning his head. "Wait, how did you—" But he was gone, into the crowd. Bare feet slapping stone, he was about 15 steps into the main courtyard when he felt someone on his left. A different heartbeat. Steady, a little fast, but controlled. And something else. A faint vibration coming from their body. Not footsteps, something internal. Like bass. Like a frequency humming just beneath the skin. Interesting. He adjusted his path, 3 degrees to the left, just enough to cross her trajectory. The collision was gentle, shoulder to shoulder. "Hey!" The girl stumbled sideways. She had earphone jacks hanging from her earlobes. He could feel their weight, the way they swayed. Her hair was short on one side. She was wearing boots. She smelled like guitar strings and black coffee. "My bad," Izuku said, stopping. He turned his head toward her. Milky green eyes. That wolf tilt. His walking stick balanced perfectly on his shoulder. "Didn't see you." Her eyes dropped to his eyes. She caught it immediately. "Oh, blind? Yeah. But don't worry about it. You've got a great heartbeat." Her face went red in about half a second. "Excuse me?" "Your heartbeat," he repeated. "Most people sound like a washing machine on spin cycle right now. Anxious, loud, messy. Yours has rhythm, like a kick drum, steady." She stared at him. Her earphone jacks twitched. "That's the weirdest compliment anyone has ever given me. Stick with me. They get weirder." He tilted his head. "Kyokajiro, right?" Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know my name?" "Heard someone call it out when you walked through the gate. I've got good ears." He tapped the side of his head, among other things. She opened her mouth to respond. A sharp voice cut across the courtyard. "Out of the way, extras." Bakugo. Storming through the crowd, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched forward, explosion sweat already crackling on his palms. He was heading straight for the doors, and anyone in his path was getting shouldered aside. Izuku sighed. He flipped the walking stick off his shoulder, caught it by the middle, and flicked it behind him with a lazy backhand. The stick sailed through the air in a perfect arc. It smacked Bakugo directly in the face. The crack was loud enough to make everyone in a 10-meter radius stop and turn. Bakugo staggered. His hand flew to his nose. Blood was already running between his fingers. "What the f—" "Oops." Izuku did not turn around. His hands were back in his pockets. Didn't see you there, Sparky. Jiro's hand flew to her mouth, but the laugh came out anyway. A sharp, disbelieving laugh that she immediately tried to choke down. Bakugo's head whipped toward Izuku's back. Recognition hit him like a freight train. He knew that voice. He knew those milky green eyes. He knew those bare feet. Midoriya? Izuku waved over his shoulder. Long time. You still smell like nitroglycerin and bad decisions. Bakugo lunged. Izuku tapped his heel against the stone courtyard without breaking stride. The ground in front of Bakugo's right foot rose 2 inches, just enough. Bakugo's toe caught it. He face-planted into the pavement at full sprint. The crowd gasped. Kirishima, who happened to be standing nearby, winced. Dude, that was rough. Izuku kept walking. Jiro jogged to catch up, still holding back laughter. You know that guy? She asked. Since I was 4, he hasn't gotten smarter. And you just threw a stick at his face. Allegedly. I'm blind. Could have been the wind. Jiro snorted. She bit her lip to stop it, but the smile stayed. What's your name, walking stick? Izuku Midoriya. The greatest earthbender in the world. She raised an eyebrow. That's a hell of an introduction. It's also a statement of fact. They walked through the front doors together, side by side. Her earphone jacks swaying, his bare feet pressing into polished concrete. 2 frequencies meeting for the first time. Neither of them knew it yet. But that moment was the beginning of something the entire world would remember. The auditorium was packed. Present Mike stood on stage, volume cranked, veins in his neck doing overtime. Welcome to today's live performance. Everybody say hey. Silence. I said say hey. More silence. Rough crowd, Izuku muttered from his seat. He was slouched back, arms crossed, bare feet up on the seat in front of him. Jiro was 2 seats to his left, her jacks plugged into the armrest, listening to the building's electrical hum. Present Mike launched into the explanation. Faux villains, point values, 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, 10-minute time limit, destroy robots, earn points. And there's the 0-pointer, a gimmick worth 0 points. I'd suggest avoiding it. Izuku tilted his head. He could feel the vibrations of something massive underground, something buried beneath the northern arena. Steel. Servos, hydraulics, a machine the size of a building. Avoid it, Izuku repeated under his breath. A slow grin spread across his face. Sure. A boy in glasses stood up. Tenya Ida, based on the rigid, clipped way his heartbeat matched his posture, and started lecturing someone about being disruptive. Excuse me, the examinee in seat 2234. You have been muttering this entire time. If this is a game to you. He's talking about you, Jiro whispered. No, he's not. I wasn't muttering. You literally just said, avoid it, sure, out loud. That's called thinking strategically. Jiro stifled a laugh. Ida sat down, satisfied with his own self-importance. Present Mike wrapped up. The examinees were sorted into arenas. Izuku was assigned to Battle Center B. Jiro was assigned to a different center. Good luck, she said, standing up. She hesitated. You're going to be fine, right? The robots are big. Izuku stood. He was shorter than her by an inch, which he would grow out of, but the way he carried himself made it irrelevant. His milky eyes were aimed somewhere past her shoulder, but his attention was entirely on her. She could feel it. Kyoka. Her name and his voice made her jacks twitch. I am the greatest earthbender in the world. The robots should be worried about me. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling when she walked away. Battle Center B. The gates had not opened yet. Examinees were crowded together at the starting line, stretching, psyching themselves up, fidgeting. The tension was a living thing. Heartbeats pounding so hard, Izuku could map the entire crowd without trying. He stood at the back, barefoot, hands in his pockets, head tilted. He had tossed the walking stick somewhere. He did not remember where. He did not care. The boy with glasses, Ida, was near the front in a runner's stance. A girl with brown hair and rosy cheeks was bouncing on her toes. A blonde kid with a navel laser was adjusting his belt. A large boy with multiple arms was cracking his knuckles. Izuku pressed his toes into the ground and sent a pulse through the concrete. The entire arena mapped itself in his mind. Fake city. 47 blocks. Buildings ranging from 2 to 8 stories. Streets running in a grid. Underground, a network of tunnels, pipes, and one very, very large machine on rails waiting to deploy. The robots were already positioned. Hundreds of them, scattered throughout the city. He could feel their weight, their joints, their motors. He smiled. And, Start! Present Mike's voice boomed. Everyone sprinted, except Izuku. He took his hands out of his pockets and clasped them behind his back. Then he walked forward, steady, unhurried, bare feet pressing into the asphalt with every step. Examinees blew past him on both sides. A few glanced at the barefoot blind kid walking like he was on a morning stroll and decided he was someone else's problem. The first robots appeared around the corner. 2 pointers, insectoid, fast, lining the street in groups of 4. Examinees were engaging them with quirks. Fire, ice, acid, super strength, all of it. Izuku kept walking. A 1-pointer rolled up on his right flank. Its targeting sensor locked onto him. A mechanical arm wound back to swing. Izuku tapped his right heel against the asphalt. A pillar of bedrock erupted from the ground beneath the robot. 3 feet wide, 15 feet tall, moving faster than the eye could track. It punched through the robot's center mass and launched it into the sky like a bottle rocket. The machine crumpled around the stone, sparking and screaming, and landed 4 blocks away in a heap of slag. Izuku did not slow down, did not look, did not unclasp his hands. 2 more robots charged from the left. 3 pointers, bigger, heavier. Gun turrets spinning up. He shifted his weight to his left foot. The asphalt beneath the 2 robots liquefied into a 5-foot-wide trench. They dropped. The trench snapped shut. The sound of compressing metal was hideous, like a car being fed through a trash compactor. The tops of their heads poked out of the ground, sparking. Izuku stepped over them. An examinee, a boy with a hardening quirk, probably Kirishima, had stopped mid-sprint to stare. "Bro, what?" Izuku tilted his head toward him. "You've got a 3-pointer behind you." Kirishima spun around. There was indeed a 3-pointer. He smashed it with a hardened fist and then turned back. Izuku was already gone. Strolling down the next block, the next 3 minutes were a massacre. He walked the streets of Battle Center B like he owned the deed. Robots came from every direction. Streets, alleys, rooftops, underground. It did not matter. A wave of 1-pointers charged down a main avenue. Izuku stomped once. A wall of earth rose from the road, 20 feet tall and 100 feet long, slamming into the entire wave at once. The sound was like dropping a piano off a skyscraper. Robots compacted against the wall, stacked on top of each other, and the wall kept moving, grinding them into the side of a building until there was nothing left but sparking wreckage. A 3-pointer dropped from a rooftop behind him. He did not turn around. He flicked his bare foot backward. A chunk of street the size of a manhole cover ripped out of the ground, flew upward at an angle, and smashed the robot's head clean off its body. The headless torso crashed to the ground at Izuku's feet. He stepped over it. He was in the middle of an intersection when 6 robots converged from all 4 streets at once. He stopped, tilted his head, felt every one of them, their positions, their speeds, their weight distribution. He drove his right heel into the street. 6 pillars. 6 robots, 6 simultaneous impacts. The pillars launched from the ground at angles, each one targeting a different machine, each one punching through armor plating like a fist through wet paper. The robots flew in 6 different directions, shedding parts as they tumbled. Izuku clasped his hands behind his back again. He had not unclasped them for the pillars. He had done it entirely with his feet. In the observation room, the UA faculty was silent. Principal Nezu leaned forward in his chair, his beady eyes fixed on the screen. "That boy," he said. "Is he registered?" Izuku Midoriya. Midnight read from a tablet. Quirkless. Blind since birth. No registered quirk. "No quirk?" Ectoplasm repeated. "Then what is that?" On screen, Izuku stomped his foot and sent a rolling wave of earth down an entire city block. The wave tore up the street like a zipper, flipping cars, shattering storefronts, and sweeping a dozen robots into a pile of rubble at the far end. He walked on top of the wave as it moved, surfing the destruction, hands still behind his back. "That," Recovery Girl said quietly, "is something I have never seen before." "Look at the kill counter," Present Mike said. His voice was hushed for the first time in his career. He's at 77 points. In 4 minutes, he hasn't taken a single hit. 77? Midnight blinked. "Nobody has ever." 80, Nezu corrected. He just got 3 more. On screen, Izuku had passed by a 2-pointer that was engaging another examinee. Without slowing down, he raised his right foot and brought it down. A slab of rock rose from the sidewalk, fell on the robot like a fly swatter, and smashed it flat. The examinee, a girl with vines for hair, stared at him with her mouth open. "You're welcome," Izuku said. He was at the center of the arena now. He had walked the entire distance. Not jogged. Not sprinted. Walked. His heart rate, picked up by the building's sensors, was barely above resting. And then the ground shook. Everyone felt it. A rhythmic, thundering vibration, getting louder, getting closer. The zero-pointer. It came around the corner like a building that learned to walk. 40 meters tall, treads the width of a highway, a body made of reinforced titanium and compressed alloys, bristling with sensor arrays and hydraulic arms. Its shadow swallowed the entire block. Examinees ran, every single one. They turned and sprinted in the opposite direction, screaming, abandoning points, abandoning dignity. The ground shook with every movement of the machine. Izuku stood in the middle of the street. He did not run. He tilted his head. He felt the machine. All of it. Every bolt, every plate, every piston, every gear. Thousands of tons of metal and circuitry bearing down on him. He sighed. All right. He planted both feet. Shoulder width. His hands dropped to his sides, the first time he had unclasped them all exam. He bent his knees, sank his center of gravity, pressed his toes into the broken asphalt, and connected to everything beneath him. The zero-pointer raised a massive arm. It came down. Izuku punched the ground. The street split. Not cracked. Split. A fissure ripped open from his fist to the base of the zero-pointer, 3 feet wide and bottomless. The machine lurched, its front treads dropping into the gap, momentum pitching it forward. But Izuku was not done. He drove both feet into the ground and pushed down. The earth around the fissure began to glow. Orange, then red, then white. Heat shimmered off the surface. The asphalt bubbled. The concrete melted. The stone beneath it turned liquid. A vortex of magma erupted from the fissure. The sound was apocalyptic, a roar that shook windows for 6 blocks. The lava surged upward, wrapping around the zero-pointer's lower half, eating through the titanium like acid through paper. The machine screamed, its servos shrieking, its hull buckling, its metal frame glowing red and then white and then collapsing inward as the structural integrity vanished. The top half of the zero-pointer sagged forward, disconnected from its melted base. Izuku stomped one more time. A pillar of stone, 30 feet wide, launched with enough force to crack the sound barrier, slammed into the machine's upper body and sent it toppling backward into the molten pit. It exploded, not with fire, with heat. The metal hit the lava pool and detonated outward in a spray of molten slag that rained down across the arena like a deadly orange snowfall. Izuku raised one hand. The falling lava froze in midair, still glowing, still liquid, but suspended. He swept his arm to the side. Every drop redirected, arcing away from the fleeing examinees, and splattered harmlessly into the empty streets. The lava pool cooled, the stone hardened, smoke rose. Where the zero-pointer had been, there was now a crater of cooling obsidian and slag. Izuku straightened up. He brushed his hands on his pants. Every examinee in Battle Center B was staring at him, frozen. Jaws slack, some on their knees. Kirishima had stopped running. He was facing Izuku from 100 meters away, eyes the size of dinner plates, fists clenched at his sides. "That is the manliest thing I've ever seen in my life!" He screamed, tears streaming down his face. Ida had his glasses in his hand because they had fogged from the heat. His mouth was opening and closing with no sound coming out. The girl with brown hair, Uraraka, was clutching her chest, staring at the crater, whispering, "What? What is he?" In the observation room, absolute silence. Every screen showed the same thing. A barefoot teenager standing in a field of cooling lava, dusting off his hands, all might, watching from a separate monitor, leaned forward. His skeletal form was trembling. Not with weakness, with something else. That boy. Who is that boy? On screen, Izuku turned toward the nearest cluster of examinees. He could feel them staring. He could hear their heartbeats. Every single one of them thumping in their chests like they were trying to escape. He grinned, wide and sharp and absolutely fearless. "I am the greatest earthbender in the world." His voice carried across the ruined arena. "Don't you dunderheads forget it." Time ran out. The buzzer sounded. The exam was over. Final score for Izuku Midoriya, 147 villain points, plus an undisclosed number of rescue points for redirecting the lava away from other examinees. The highest entrance exam score in UA history, by a lot. 1 week later, The acceptance letter arrived. Izuku was on the roof of his apartment building, bare feet pressed against the concrete, feeling the neighborhood pulse beneath him. Afternoon sun on his face, a breeze carrying the smell of his mother's cooking from the open kitchen window. His mother came up the stairs, envelope in hand, already crying. She had not opened it yet, but the UA seal was enough. Izuku, it's here! It came! He took the envelope, felt its weight. Standard paper, something small and hard inside, a disc. He tore it open. The disc hit the concrete roof and projected a hologram. All Might's voice boomed out. Young Midoriya, I am here, as a hologram. Izuku tilted his head. I'm blind. This is a visual medium. Really thought this through, huh? All Might, in the recording, laughed like he could hear the complaint. Your score in the entrance exam was extraordinary. 147 villain points, a record, plus 53 rescue points for protecting your fellow examinees from your own attack. Wait, Izuku said. I got rescue points for cleaning up my own mess? That brings your total to 200 points, the highest score in UA history. Inko collapsed onto a lawn chair, sobbing happy tears. Welcome to your hero academia. Like the hologram cut out. The disc clattered on the concrete. Izuku picked it up, rolled it between his fingers, felt the metal inside, cheap aluminum. He bent it into a tiny flower without touching it, and held it out to his mother. Told you, he said. Inko took the flower. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. I know, she managed. I know you did. He sat next to her on the roof, his bare feet pressed against the warm concrete. His mother's heartbeat, fast and flooded with joy, resonated through the building and into his bones. He smiled. A real one. The kind he saved for her. The first day at UA was chaos. Not because of the school. The school was fine. Impressive, even. The campus was enormous, the facilities were cutting edge, and the building itself was a playground of metal and stone that Izuku could feel humming with potential from the front gate. The chaos was the people. Class 1A was a zoo. 20 students, 20 heartbeats, 20 different frequencies of anxiety and excitement and ego. Izuku walked through the door barefoot, his school uniform modified with the pant legs rolled to mid-calf and no shoes, which had required a 3-page letter from his mother and a doctor's note he had forged himself, and immediately mapped the room. 20 desks, 18 students already seated. One empty desk near the back left. One near the window, Bakugo was in the third row. Izuku felt him instantly. That aggressive heartbeat, those micro-explosions constantly detonating in his palms. He was slouched in his chair with his feet on the desk, radiating hostility like a space heater. Jiro was 2 rows behind Bakugo, near the wall. Her heartbeat, that steady, rhythmic kick drum. Her earphone jacks were plugged into the desk, and she was tapping her finger along to something only she could hear. Izuku walked past Bakugo without a word. That, in itself, was an insult, and they both knew it. He dropped into the empty desk directly behind Jiro. She turned around. Walking stick, she said, a hint of a smile. Kick drum, he replied. Her eyebrows went up. Kick drum? Your heartbeat. Sounds like a kick drum, I told you. She shook her head, but the smile stayed. You made it in. Was there ever a doubt? You melted a 50-foot robot. 40 meters, actually. And I didn't just melt it. I liquefied its structural foundation, launched its upper body with a kinetic pillar, and redirected the slag fallout to prevent civilian casualties. He leaned back in his chair. But yeah, melted works too. You're insufferable. I've been told. A yellow sleeping bag inched through the door. Everyone stared. The sleeping bag stood upright. A zipper came down. A man emerged. Gaunt face, dead eyes. A capture weapon scarf wrapped around his neck like it lived there. Stubble like he had given up on grooming as a concept. Shota Aizawa. Pro hero. Eraserhead. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down after I entered the room, Aizawa said. That's not rational. I'm your homeroom teacher. Put on your gym clothes. We're going outside. Izuku felt Aizawa's heartbeat. Steady. Measured. The man was tired down to his molecules, but underneath the exhaustion was something rigid and immovable. A spine of iron will. Interesting. What about orientation? Ida asked, his hand shooting up like a missile. I'm your orientation, Aizawa said. Outside. Now. The quirk apprehension test, 8 exercises. Ball throw, standing long jump, 50-meter dash, endurance running, grip strength, sustained sideways jumps, upper body training, seated toe touch. Aizawa stood at the center of the field, capture weapon hanging loose, eyes scanning the class. The person who scores last will be judged hopeless and expelled. Gasps, protests, panic. That's not fair, Uraraka said. Natural disasters, highway pileups, building collapses. Nothing in this world is fair. Aizawa's eyes swept the class and landed on Izuku, the barefoot kid, standing at the back of the group, head tilted, hands clasped behind his back, no visible anxiety, no visible anything except a faint smirk. Midoriya, Aizawa said. You scored highest on the entrance exam. Did I? I didn't check. You scored 200 points. Murmurs rippled through the class. That's insane, Kaminari whispered. 200? The old record was like 70. What's his quirk? Sero asked. He doesn't have one, Jiro said, like quiet enough that only a few people heard. Momo Yaoyorozu turned sharply. He doesn't have a quirk? Then how? You'll see, Jiro said. Aizawa tossed a softball to Izuku. Ball throw. You're first. Use whatever abilities you have. Izuku caught the ball. Felt its weight. Standard softball. Rubber core, leather cover. Nothing special. He walked to the circle, bare feet pressed into the dirt. He felt every grain, every pebble, every root. The field spread out in his seismic sense like a map, flat, firm, good soil. Deep bedrock, 30 meters down. He tossed the ball up and caught it. Twice. So I just throw it far, he asked. As far as you can, Aizawa confirmed. Something changed in Aizawa's eyes. A subtle red glow. His hair lifted. His capture weapon stirred erasure. Izuku felt it. Or rather, he felt nothing. Because there was nothing to erase. No quirk factor to shut down. No genetic ability to suppress. Aizawa was trying to take away something Izuku did not have, and Izuku felt Aizawa's heartbeat spike. The man knew it was not working. Izuku picked at his ear with his free hand. Sensei, your heart rate just jumped. Are you trying to stare me down? He grinned, wide and toothy. Because I'm blind. Really not working. Silence across the class. Aizawa's hair dropped. His eyes returned to normal. His expression did not change, but his jaw tightened. Proceed, he said. Izuku set the softball on the ground. Then he stepped back 3 feet. He raised his right foot, brought it down. The earth moved. The ground around the softball restructured itself in a fraction of a second. Soil compressed. Rock layers realigned. A trench formed behind the ball. A fault line, artificially created, angled at 45 degrees and running deep. Pressure built in the compressed stone beneath the trench as Izuku drove his heel down harder, pushing more force into the fault. Then he released. A pillar of stone erupted from the trench at an angle, its tip catching the softball like a golf tee catching a ball. The pillar extended at terrifying speed, launching the softball skyward with a sound like a cannon shot. The shockwave flattened the grass in a 30-foot radius. The ball vanished into the sky. Everyone watched, heads tilted up, mouths open. The ball climbed and climbed. And climbed. Aizawa looked at the measurement device. The number was climbing. It kept climbing. He blinked. It was still climbing. The device's screen flickered. The number display stuttered. Then the screen cracked, physically cracked, as if the number was too large to contain. Aizawa stared at the broken screen. The device broke, he said. Izuku shrugged. My bad. How far did it go? Kaminari asked, his voice cracking. Aizawa pulled out his phone, checked a satellite-linked backup measurement. His eyes widened a fraction. It hasn't landed yet. It hasn't landed? Half the class screamed. Izuku clasped his hands behind his back. So do I pass, or? Bakugo's composure, which had been hanging by a thread since the entrance exam, snapped. What the hell was that? He launched from the group, explosions popping in both palms, charging straight at Izuku's back. No warning, no hesitation. Just rage. Izuku did not turn around. He stomped his left foot. The ground beneath Bakugo's feet erupted upward and clamped around his ankles like a bear trap. Stone encased his shoes and lower shins in a grip so tight the rock cracked under its own compression. Bakugo's momentum vanished. He pitched forward, caught mid-charge, arms flailing. What? Izuku flicked his right foot. A pebble, barely the size of a marble, popped out of the dirt, arced through the air in a perfect parabola, and landed directly in Bakugo's open, screaming mouth. Bakugo gagged, coughed, spat out the pebble. His face was the color of a fire truck. Stay grounded, Sparky, Izuku said, still facing away from him. Dead silence. Then Kirishima lost it. Bro. He was doubled over, hands on his knees, tears running down his face. He flicked a rock into his mouth. Did anyone else see that? Kaminari was on the ground, rolling. Sero was holding onto Kaminari's shoulder, wheezing. Mina Ashido had both hands over her mouth, her yellow eyes huge. Jiro had turned around so nobody could see her face, but her shoulders were shaking. Todoroki, standing at the edge of the group, watched with mismatched eyes. His expression was unreadable, but his right hand, the ice hand, had frost creeping across the knuckles. A tell. He was paying very close attention. Aizawa stepped forward. Bakugo, stand down. I'll kill him. You can't move your feet. Aizawa's voice was flat. Midoriya, release him. Izuku tilted his head. Say please. Aizawa's capture weapon twitched, but the faintest ghost of something that might have been respect crossed his face. Release him, Aizawa repeated. Izuku tapped his foot. The stone around Bakugo's ankles crumbled to dust. Bakugo stumbled forward, caught himself, and wheeled around with murder in his eyes. But he didn't charge again. Because deep down, past the ego and the anger and the pathological need to be the best, Katsuki Bakugo understood something he would never admit out loud. He could not beat Izuku Midoriya. He could not even touch him, and standing on the same ground as the blind kid who controlled that ground was a losing proposition that even his pride could do the math on. Aizawa watched the exchange. Then he looked at Izuku. What are you? He asked. Quiet. Direct. I'm the greatest earthbender in the world, Izuku said. That's not a quirk. No, it's not. Aizawa stared at him for a long time. Then he nodded once and moved on. Next exercise. The rest of the apprehension test was a formality. Izuku scored first in every single exercise, not by small margins, by chasms, 50-meter dash. He rode a wave of earth like a surfboard, crossing in 1.03 seconds. Kaminari and Ida both stared with their mouths open. Grip strength. He wrapped the device in stone and compressed. The device crumpled into a ball before it could register a number. Another broken measurement tool. Standing long jump. He launched himself from a stone ramp and sailed clear over the sandbox, the fence, and the adjacent running track. Recovery Girl had to retrieve him from the soccer field. Endurance running. He sat on a moving column of earth that carried him around the track at a steady jog pace. He looked like a king on a throne. Sero started laughing so hard he had to sit down. When the results posted, Izuku was first. Bakugo was second. Todoroki was third, and Mineta was last. The student in last place will be expelled, Aizawa said. Then he blinked. Just kidding. It was a logical ruse to make you try harder. Mineta collapsed, but Izuku felt the lie in Aizawa's heartbeat. It had not been a ruse. Aizawa had fully intended to expel the weakest student. He just had not expected 20 students to all try this hard. Izuku said nothing. He did not need to. He had made his point. Every student in Class 1A now knew the pecking order, and he had said it without raising his hands. The first week at UA settled into a rhythm. Izuku sat in the back of the class, barefoot, leaned back, picking up everything through the floor. He could feel when students were falling asleep. Kaminari, constantly. He could feel when Bakugo's heart rate spiked in anger every 20 minutes. He could feel Todoroki's pulse, slow, isolated, the heartbeat of someone who had built walls so thick even his own blood couldn't warm them. And he could feel Jiro. Always. Her heartbeat was the first thing he noticed every morning when he walked into the building. Before he felt Aizawa in his sleeping bag, before he felt the hum of the school's electrical system, before he felt the deep rumble of the support course's workshop, Jiro's heartbeat, steady, musical, real. They sat together at lunch, not because anyone arranged it, because gravity arranged it. She drifted toward him, and he let her. So you can feel everything through the ground, she said, stabbing a piece of tofu with her chopstick. Everything that touches the ground, yeah. Heartbeats too? Heartbeats. Breathing patterns. Muscle tension. Emotional states sometimes. She paused. That's a lot of information. It's my version of seeing. Better, honestly. You can lie with your face. You can't lie with your heartbeat. She considered this. Her earphone jacks twitched. They did that when she was thinking, he noticed. So you always know when someone's lying. Almost always. That must be exhausting. He tilted his head. Nobody had ever said that before. Everyone always focused on how cool or powerful his abilities were. Nobody had considered what it meant to be constantly surrounded by the raw, unfiltered truth of every person around you. Yeah, he said, it kind of is. Her heartbeat shifted. Softer, warmer, a frequency change so slight that nobody else in the world would have caught it. She tapped her chopstick against the table. 2 quick beats, 1 long, a rhythm. He tapped his bare foot against the floor in response. Same rhythm, mirrored. She smiled, small, private, just for him. Your heartbeat doesn't annoy me, he said. She blinked. Is that a compliment? It's the highest compliment I give. Her cheeks flushed. She looked at her food. Her jacks curled slightly. A self-conscious tell she did not know she had. You're ridiculous, she muttered. Ridiculously talented, I know. She kicked him under the table. He caught her foot between his bare feet and held it for a half second, just long enough for her blush to deepen, then released. Don't start something you can't finish, Kyoka. She threw a piece of tofu at his face. He tilted his head and it sailed past. I'm blind, not slow. She laughed. The real kind. The kind that made her jacks bounce. And Izuku memorized the vibration of that laugh, filed it in the part of his mind where he kept the things that mattered. The evening study sessions became a thing. Not an official thing, just a natural evolution of 2 people who preferred each other's company to everyone else's. They sat in the common room, Jiro with her guitar and textbooks, Izuku with his feet on the coffee table, and his head tilted back, absorbing the entire building through the floor. She played, he listened. They talked. So the badger moles, she said, strumming a minor chord. You actually lived underground with them? 2 months. What was it like? He was quiet for a moment. His feet shifted on the table, processing. Peaceful, he said. The badger moles don't talk. They communicate through vibration, through the earth. You press your hand to a wall and you just know what they feel, where they've been, what they want. And they taught you? They taught me that earthbending isn't about force. It's about listening. The earth is always moving, always shifting, always talking. Most people can't hear it. I can. Jiro strummed another chord, lower, resonant. You know, she said, that's kind of what music is, listening to something most people ignore and giving it shape. He turned his head toward her, not fast, slow, deliberate, his milky eyes aimed at her collarbone. Yeah, he said, it is. She played a melody, something she had been working on, soft, wandering, with a recurring bass note that grounded the whole thing. He tapped his foot along, not to the melody, to the bass, to the foundation. They stayed like that for an hour. No more words, just sound and vibration and the quiet understanding of 2 people who operated on the same frequency. When she got up to leave, she touched his shoulder. Brief. Warm. Good night, Earthbender. Good night, kick drum. She stopped. You're really gonna make that stick, huh? It's your name now. Accept it. She walked away, shaking her head. Her heartbeat was doing something complicated. Fast, then slow, then fast again. A rhythm he had never heard from her before. He smiled. 2 weeks into the semester, everything went to hell. It started as a field trip. The Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ, was a massive training facility designed by the Space Hero 13. Different disaster zones under one roof. Flood zone, landslide zone, conflagration zone, downpour zone, ruin zone. The idea was to train students in rescue operations under extreme conditions. Aizawa led them in. 13 gave a speech about how quirks could save and destroy. Izuku stood at the back of the group, barefoot on the concrete entrance platform, his hands clasped behind his back. He was not listening to 13, he was listening to the building. Something was wrong. He felt it first as a tremor, not a natural one, an artificial disturbance in the electromagnetic field around the facility. The lights flickered, the air pressure dropped, and then at the center of the building's main plaza, the space between atoms ripped open, a black mist, swirling, expanding, and through it, footsteps. Dozens. Then hundreds. Izuku's head snapped toward the disturbance. Sensei, he said, his voice cut through 13's speech like a blade. Every student turned. There are 173 people who were not in this building 30 seconds ago. They came through the floor. Some of them have weapons. One of them has no heartbeat. Aizawa was already moving. He looked down at the central plaza. The black mist portal was fully open. Villains poured through it like roaches from a drain. At the front, a man covered in severed hands, scratching at his own neck. Beside him, a towering creature, black-skinned, brain exposed, its eyes vacant and dead. And behind them, a figure made of black mist, its yellow eyes glowing. Villains, Aizawa said. One word. He was already pulling his goggles down. No way. Kirishima stepped forward, fists hardening. Real villains? At UA? Is this part of the exercise? Kaminari asked, voice shaking. It's not, Izuku said. Their heartbeats are wrong. These people have killed before. The big one, the one with no heartbeat, it's not human. Aizawa glanced at him. A beat of something passed between them. An acknowledgement. A silent, unspoken understanding between two people who assessed threats before they processed fear. 13, Aizawa said. Protect the students. Get them to the exit. I'm going in. Wait. 13 started. Aizawa jumped. He dove off the entrance platform, capture weapon unfurling, and landed in the middle of the first wave of villains. He was efficient, brutal, a weapon of a man wrapped in bandages and exhaustion. He took down 5 in as many seconds, erasing quirks and breaking limbs, but there were too many. Even Izuku could feel it. Aizawa's heartbeat was accelerating, his movements were slowing, he was pushing past his limits, and the villains were not running out. The black mist appeared at the entrance platform. Greetings, it said. Its voice was smooth, polite, the kind of politeness that came with a knife behind the back. We are the League of Villains. We have come to kill All Might. 13 stepped forward. Bakugo and Kirishima lunged. The mist expanded, swallowed the platform, and suddenly every student was being scattered. Warped to different zones across the facility, Izuku felt it happening. The mist wrapped around his classmates and pulled them into pockets of distorted space. He felt Jiro vanish, her heartbeat winking out of his range as she was sent to a distant part of the building. His jaw tightened. The mist closed around him. Izuku stamped his foot. The concrete beneath him turned into a pillar that launched him straight up, out of the mist's reach, 20 feet in the air. He hung at the apex for a split second, the entire building mapped in his mind, every villain, every student, every structural beam. Then he came down. He landed in the central plaza. Both feet. The impact sent a shockwave through the floor that cracked the tile in a 50-foot radius. Every villain in the plaza felt it. Every one of them turned. Izuku Midoriya stood barefoot in the center of USJ, hands clasped behind his back, milky green eyes aimed at nothing. You guys are loud, he said, uncoordinated, and standing on my turf. The hand-covered villain, Shigaraki, tilted his head. Who's this? A student, the mist, Kurogiri said, reforming beside him. He evaded my warp. How? He moved the ground. Shigaraki's visible eye narrowed. He scratched his neck harder. Moved the ground? What kind of quirk? Not a quirk, Izuku said. Something better. He stomped. The central plaza erupted. Sinkholes. A dozen of them. They opened in the floor like hungry mouths, 20 feet wide, snapping shut the instant a villain fell in. 50 villains gone in 3 seconds. Their screams were muffled as compacted stones sealed around their bodies up to their necks, leaving only their heads above ground, trapped and immobilized. The remaining villains froze. Some ran. Those who ran found that the floor rose in front of them like a wall, boxing them in. Those who fought found that the stone beneath their feet swallowed their legs. Izuku did not move from his spot. His hands stayed behind his back. He did this with his feet. Stomps, taps, weight shifts. The ground was an extension of his body and it was hungry. 20 seconds. 80 villains neutralized. No injuries, no deaths. Just stone prisons holding panicked, helpless thugs. Shigaraki watched. His scratching had stopped. His hand dropped to his side. What are you? He breathed. I told you, Izuku said. I'm the greatest earthbender in the world. The Nomu moved. It was fast, stupidly fast for something that big. It crossed the plaza in 2 steps. A black blur of muscle and exposed brain, and swung a fist that would have turned a normal person into red mist. Izuku felt it coming. Every footstep, every shift in weight, every twitch of its massive arm, he sidestepped. Barely. The fist cratered the floor where he had been standing, sending up a plume of dust and debris. Izuku tilted his head. He sent a pulse through the ground and read the Nomu's body. Its bone density was wrong. Its muscle fibers were layered, stacked, artificially enhanced. Its skin was harder than rubber, and it had no heartbeat. Nothing pumping blood, nothing circulating oxygen. It was alive, but it was not alive the way anything should be. Shock absorption, Shigaraki said, grinning behind the hand on his face. That Nomu was designed to kill All Might. Whatever you just did to those small fry means nothing. You can't hurt it. Izuku stood still, the Nomu lunged again, both fists this time, hammering down like pile drivers. Izuku stamped his foot. A wall of stone erupted from the floor between him and the Nomu, 10 feet thick. The Nomu's fists plowed through it. Stone exploded. But by then, Izuku was behind a second wall. The Nomu broke through that too. Then a third. Each wall absorbed momentum. Each one bled kinetic energy from the attack. The Nomu was still hitting hard, but it was hitting less hard with every impact, and Izuku was not hiding, he was testing. Shock absorption, he repeated. Cute. He touched the floor with his right foot. Not a stomp this time, a press. Gentle. Reaching down through the concrete, through the foundation, into the raw stone beneath the building, he found a structural support beam. Steel. Thick as a telephone pole. Running from the foundation up through the wall to his left. Metal bending. The wall beside the Nomu bulged. Then it ripped open. A steel beam, 15 feet of reinforced construction-grade metal, tore itself free from the building's skeleton and shot toward the Nomu like a javelin. It hit. The beam wrapped around the Nomu's torso, bending, coiling, compressing. A second beam ripped free from the opposite wall and wrapped around its arms. A third from the ceiling, binding its legs, the Nomu was immobilized, wrapped in steel so compressed it creaked under the tension. Its muscles bulged against the bonds. It roared, a sound that shook the walls. Shock absorption works against impacts, Izuku said. He was walking toward the Nomu. Slowly, his bare feet clicking against broken tile. It absorbs force, kinetic energy, blunt trauma. He stopped 3 feet away. Let's see you absorb a furnace. He drove his heel into the floor. The ground beneath the Nomu ignited. Not fire, not heat lamps. Magma. The stone under the Nomu's feet turned white-hot and liquid in the span of a breath. Orange-red lava bubbled up through cracks in the tile, pooling around the Nomu's trapped legs. The Nomu screamed. It was a sound that every person in USJ would remember for the rest of their lives. A shrieking, guttural howl of a thing that was not supposed to feel pain suddenly being introduced to temperatures that melted the steel bands around its body. The lava rose, past the Nomu's knees, past its waist. The creature thrashed, its regeneration trying to keep up, new skin growing over melted flesh only to be consumed again by the churning magma. Regeneration, Izuku noted, feeling the creature's body cycle. Useful. He raised the temperature. The lava went from orange to white. The heat warped the air above it. Students across the facility felt the temperature spike. Todoroki, trapped in the landslide zone, looked up and saw the air shimmer. The Nomu stopped screaming. Not because it stopped hurting, because the creature's vocal cords had melted. Its body was sinking, dissolving, regenerating and redissolving in an endless cycle that was rapidly losing to the heat. Izuku stomped once more. The lava pool widened. The Nomu sank to its neck, then its chin, then its exposed brain. The last remaining structure dipped beneath the surface with a final wet hiss. The lava cooled. Izuku pulled the heat back into the earth, compressing the magma into solid obsidian. The pool hardened into a flat, black disc embedded in the floor. The Nomu was gone. Entombed in stone. Permanently. Silence. Every remaining villain in the plaza had stopped moving. Those still above ground were on their knees. Some had their hands up, one had passed out. Shigaraki stood at the edge of the plaza. His body was rigid. His hands were trembling. The fingers scratching his neck had drawn blood. That was the Nomu, he said. His voice was thin, cracking. That was designed to kill All Might. You just. I just did what I do, Izuku said. He turned his head toward Shigaraki. His milky eyes caught the flickering emergency lights. Your turn. Shigaraki lunged. It was desperate, unhinged. 5 fingers reaching for Izuku's face, decay ready to turn flesh to dust on contact. He crossed the distance in a heartbeat, arms outstretched. Izuku tapped his big toe against the floor. The ground beneath Shigaraki's feet split. Not cracked, split along 2 divergent fault lines moving in opposite directions. Shigaraki's left foot went one way, his right foot went the other. His legs stretched into an involuntary split that wrenched his hips and tore something in his groin. He screamed, high and ragged and utterly undignified. Before he could process the pain, a jagged stalagmite shot from the fissure between his legs. It slammed into his chest with the force of a freight train, lifting him off the ground entirely. The stone spike carried him 10 feet backward and pinned him against the floor on the other side, the breath exploding from his lungs, the hands on his body scattered. The one on his face flew off and clattered across the tile. Without it, he looked young, pathetic. A pale, thin man with cracked lips and wild eyes, wheezing on the floor with a stone column pressing into his sternum. Kurogiri, Shigaraki gasped. Get me out. The black mist swirled. Kurogiri's yellow eyes appeared, wide with a fear that mist should not have been capable of expressing. A portal ripped open beneath Shigaraki, and the villain fell through it, the stalagmites scraping his ribs as he vanished. Kurogiri turned his eyes to Izuku. "This isn't over," the mist said. Izuku tilted his head. "Your voice is trembling. That means it is." Kurogiri vanished. The portal closed. The central plaza fell silent. Izuku stood alone in a field of destruction. Trapped villains groaned from their stone prisons. A disk of obsidian marked the Nomu's grave. Cracked tile and bent metal spread in every direction. The air still shimmered with residual heat. And then from the flood zone, Kirishima's voice cut through the silence. "Did he just kill that thing?" "He entombed it in lava!" Kaminari screamed from somewhere near the ruins zone. "He made lava out of the floor! What is he?" Tsuyu, pulling herself from the flood zone's edge, blinked her wide frog eyes. "Ribbit." That was terrifying. Momo had a hand over her mouth. He took down an anti-All Might weapon, by himself, in under 2 minutes. From across the facility, Izuku felt Jiro's heartbeat reappear in his range. She was in the mountain zone, fighting low-tier villains with Koda. Her pulse was elevated but steady, fighting, not panicking. She was fine, his shoulders relaxed. Then the front doors burst open. All Might arrived. The #1 hero. Muscle form, no smile. His face was set in something far beyond his usual performance. His eyes swept the scene. The trapped villains, the destruction, the obsidian tomb, and the single barefoot student standing in the middle of it all. All Might stopped. Izuku turned his head. "You're late," he said. All Might opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Young Midoriya," he said. "What happened here?" "Villains showed up. I handled it." The Nomu, buried. About 6 feet into that obsidian slab, it's not getting out. All Might looked at the slab. He could feel the residual heat from 20 feet away. His jaw worked. "You used lava bending. I used what was necessary." All Might stared at him for a long moment. The other pro heroes, Snipe, Ectoplasm, Midnight, poured in behind him, expecting a war zone. They found a graveyard and already won battle. Izuku felt All Might's heartbeat. It was complicated. Awe, concern, relief, and something else. Something that pulsed underneath like a bass note, fear. All Might was afraid of him, just a little, just enough for Izuku to catch. He filed that away and said nothing. The aftermath of USJ was a storm. Media descended. Parents called. UA went into lockdown. Meetings were held. Reports were filed. Every student was interviewed. Izuku's interview lasted 45 minutes. Principal Nezu conducted it personally, sitting across from the blind student with a cup of tea that was too small for even his tiny paws. "You neutralized approximately 80 villains, destroyed the League's bioweapon, and incapacitated their leader. Alone. The leader escaped," Izuku said. "The Mist One got him out." "Still, that is an extraordinary performance. It's what I do." Nezu studied him. See, his beady eyes were sharp in a way that his cute appearance belied. "Midoriya, what you have, it is not a quirk. We've established that." "Then what is it?" "I call it earthbending. I feel the earth. I move the earth. I become the earth if I have to. It's been with me since I was 4. And the lava bending? I superheated stone using friction and pressure. It's still earth, just hotter." Nezu sipped his tea. "Are there limits?" Izuku smiled. "I haven't found any." "That," Nezu said, "is what concerns me." "That's what should excite you," Izuku replied. "I'm on your side." Nezu set down his tea. He looked at Izuku for a long time. Then he smiled, his real smile, the one that said his brilliant brain was already running calculations. "Welcome to UA, Midoriya. I think you'll fit in just fine." After the interviews, after the lockdown, after the chaos, Izuku found Jiro on the roof of the 1A dormitory building. She was sitting on the edge, legs dangling, earphone jacks plugged into the railing. Her guitar was beside her. The sun was setting, orange and pink smeared across a sky Izuku could not see but could feel in the warmth on his skin. He sat next to her, bare feet hanging over the edge. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. Then she remembered he couldn't see it. "Yeah, we got warped to the mountain zone, some low-tier guys. Koda and I handled it." He nodded. He already knew. He had felt her fight from across the facility the moment she was back in range. "Were you worried about me?" she asked, half joking, half not. "Your heartbeat disappeared from my range when Kurogiri warped you," he said. "For about 90 seconds, I couldn't feel you." She looked at him. His jaw was set, his milky eyes aimed at the horizon he could not see. And, she pressed, and I didn't like it. She pulled her jacks from the railing. Slowly. You melted a Nomu, she said. I did. That thing was supposed to kill All Might. It didn't get the chance. She shook her head. Izuku, that's insane. You know that, right? What you did was insane. Was it? You're 15. You just killed an anti-symbol of peace weapon with lava you made from the floor. Made from the ground, technically. The floor was just the access point. She punched his arm. I'm being serious. He caught her fist. Not grabbing, just covering it with his hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around her knuckles. I know you are, he said. She didn't pull her hand away. When I got warped, she said, the first thing I thought was, I hope he's okay. I'm always okay. I know. That's the annoying part. He laughed. Quick and real. Then he let go of her hand and leaned back on his palms. You're the only heartbeat in this school that doesn't annoy me, Kyoka. You've said that before. It keeps being true. She leaned sideways, her shoulder touched his. He didn't move away. She didn't either. They sat like that as the sun set. Two frequencies aligned, humming in the space between words. The sports festival came 3 weeks later, UA's biggest public event. Televised worldwide, every hero agency watching, every student's chance to prove themselves, or in Izuku's case, to remind everyone. The stadium was enormous. 80,000 seats, everyone filled. Cameras on every angle, present mic in the announcer's booth, already at volume 11. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the UA Sports Festival, the event where tomorrow's heroes rise. Class 1A marched into the arena. Izuku was at the front because he had scored highest on the entrance exam, which meant he had to give a speech. He walked to the podium, barefoot. His uniform's collar was open. His hands were in his pockets. His hair was a mess. 80,000 pairs of eyes on him. He tilted his head toward the microphone. Milky green eyes catching stadium lights. I'm going to win, he said. He walked off the podium. The crowd lost its mind. Half were laughing, half were offended. Bakugo looked like he was about to detonate. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes followed Izuku back to the group with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. Midnight took the stage. The first event is the obstacle race. The gates opened on a massive course, 4 kilometers. Obstacles, terrain changes, minefields, every student for themselves. Start! The bottleneck at the gate was instant. 400 students trying to squeeze through a narrow passage at the same time. Shoving, quirks firing, chaos. Izuku did not enter the gate. He stomped his foot. A wave of earth rose beneath him, 10 feet high, a rolling tide of stone and compressed soil, and carried him up and over the stadium wall. He surfed the wave like he was riding the ocean, bare feet locked into the moving stone, hands behind his back, wind in his hair. The camera caught it perfectly. Present Mike's voice cracked. Midoriya he's riding a wave of earth. He's bypassed the bottleneck entirely. He's already passed the first obstacle. The first obstacle was a field of giant robots, more zero-pointers deployed to block the path. Izuku rode his wave directly at them. 3 zero-pointers swiveled their targeting systems toward him. He didn't slow down. He compressed the leading edge of the wave into a battering ram of solid granite and plowed through the first robot's legs. The machine toppled backward, crashing into the second. The third one swung a massive arm. Izuku dropped off the wave, landed on one foot, and drove his heel into the ground. A column of stone erupted beneath the third robot's torso, launching it into the sky. It flew 50 meters straight up, spinning end over end, and crashed into the ground beyond the obstacle zone with an impact that shook the stadium. The students behind him had not even reached the first robot yet. This is unreal, Present Mike screamed. Midoriya is already at the second obstacle, and nobody else has cleared the first. The second obstacle was a ravine. The fall, a series of narrow stone pillars over a deep chasm connected by tight ropes. Izuku did not slow down. He stomped twice. Stone bridges erupted from the walls of the ravine, connecting the pillars in a straight line. He walked across, casual, hands behind his back. He had built his own bridge. Some students behind him used his bridges. He did not care. The third obstacle was the minefield, a wide field planted with pressure-sensitive explosives. Every step was a potential detonation. Todoroki was approaching from behind, skating on ice. Bakugo was airborne, using explosions to fly. They were gaining. Izuku stopped at the edge of the minefield. He pressed his bare toes into the earth. He felt every mine. All of them. 3,412 buried charges, each one a unique point of pressure in his seismic map. He smiled. He raised his right foot, brought it down. Every mine on the right side of the field detonated simultaneously. The explosion was staggering. A wall of pink smoke and concussive force that blew sideways, away from Izuku, into empty space. The ground on the right side of the field cratered. The shockwave knocked Bakugo out of the air and sent Todoroki's ice shelf cracking. The left side of the field was clear. Every mine on that side had been compressed into dead charges by the shockwave traveling through the ground. Izuku walked across the clear path, barefoot, at a leisurely pace. He crossed the finish line so far ahead of second place that Present Mike had time to describe his outfit, speculate about his training regimen, and wonder aloud whether he was human. First place, Izuku Midoriya, and it is not even close. Todoroki finished second, Bakugo third. The rest were afterthoughts. Izuku stood at the finish line, arms crossed, waiting. When Todoroki crossed, Izuku tilted his head. Took you a while, half and half. Todoroki's mismatched eyes burned, but he said nothing. When Bakugo crossed, Izuku waved. Nice hustle, Sparky. I will end you, Midoriya. You won't, but it's cute that you try. The second event was the cavalry battle. Form teams. Wear point headbands. The person in first place wears a headband worth 10 million points. Izuku wore the 10 million. I'll be my own team, he told Midnight. The crowd murmured. Midnight blinked. You want to compete alone? I don't need teammates to carry headbands. I need the ground. He tapped his bare foot on the arena floor, and the ground is always with me. Midnight looked at Aizawa. Aizawa, sitting in the announcer's booth next to Present Mike, rubbed his eyes. Let him, Aizawa said. There's no rule against it. Midnight shrugged. Solo competitor approved. Izuku stood in the center of the arena. 10 million point headband wrapped around his forehead. Every team in the competition stared at him like lions staring at a wounded gazelle. Except he was not the gazelle. Start! Every team charged. Izuku stamped his foot. A circular wall of earth erupted around him. 15 feet tall, 5 feet thick. A fortress in a heartbeat. Teams slammed into it. Quirks fired against it. Todoroki's ice crept up the side. Bakugo's explosions cratered the surface. None of it mattered. The wall repaired itself as fast as it was damaged, Izuku feeding more stone into it from below. But Izuku was not just defending. Every few seconds, he tapped a different part of the floor. Stone hands erupted from the ground beneath the teams outside, grabbing ankles, pulling riders off shoulders, snatching headbands and depositing them inside his fortress. He was stealing points from inside his castle without ever showing his face. He's stealing headbands from underground! Present Mike screamed. You can't even see him! This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever commentated. Bakugo lost his mind. He launched himself over the wall with an explosion, diving into the fortress from above. Izuku was waiting. The moment Bakugo's feet entered the fortress's airspace, the walls bent inward. Stone arms reached for him. Bakugo blasted sideways, dodging one, but a second caught his ankle. A third grabbed his wrist. A fourth plucked the headband from Kirishima's head, Bakugo's rider, through a hole that opened and closed in the wall like a mouth. Bakugo was ejected from the fortress by a stone platform that rose beneath him and catapulted him back over the wall. He landed outside, headbandless, screaming. Todoroki tried a different approach. He sent a glacier at the fortress, a massive wave of ice that covered the wall entirely. Izuku felt the temperature change. He drove his heel down. The base of the fortress heated up, not lava, just warm. The ice touching the wall melted. Water ran in rivulets down the stone. Climate control, Izuku muttered. Nice try, half and half. Time ran out. Izuku's final headband count, 10 million, plus 47,000 points stolen from other teams. He had won the cavalry battle without taking a single step. The finals. One-on-one tournament bracket. Single elimination. The event everyone came to see. The bracket went up on the screen. Izuku scanned the vibrations of the crowd, their heartbeats spiking, their feet shuffling, their excitement building. He couldn't read the screen, but Jiro leaned over from the seat next to him. You're in the second block, she said. You'll fight the winner of Kaminari versus Ibara first. Ibara? Vine Girl. Class B. Oh, that'll take about 10 seconds. Humble as always. Humility is for people who have something to prove. She rolled her eyes, but her jacks twitched with amusement. His first match was against Ibara Shiozaki. She walked into the ring with her vine hair flowing, a serene smile on her face. Izuku walked in barefoot, hands behind his back. "Start!" Ibara sent a wave of vines across the arena, a green tsunami designed to entangle and restrain. Izuku shifted his weight. A wall of stone rose from the arena floor, bisecting the vine wave. The vines wrapped around the wall uselessly. Then the wall fell forward, directly onto the vines, crushing them flat. Ibara gasped and sent more vines around the sides. They reached for Izuku's ankles. He tapped his foot. The ground beneath Ibara's feet softened into quicksand. She sank to her knees in a heartbeat, her vines losing tension as her balance vanished. "I apologize in advance," Izuku said. He stomped. A stone column rose beneath the quicksand, launching Ibara into the air like a carnival ride. She sailed upward, vines trailing, eyes wide. At the apex of the launch, she was 15 feet above the ring and 20 feet outside the boundary line. She came down outside the ring with a soft thud, vines cushioning her landing. "Out of bounds," Midnight called. "Midoriya wins." 6 seconds. Ibara was sitting on the grass, blinking, trying to process what had happened. "That was very fast," she said. The crowd erupted. Second match, Izuku versus Tokoyami. Dark Shadow surged forward the moment the match started, a massive bird-shaped entity of living shadow that had given every previous opponent problems. Izuku tilted his head. He could not see Dark Shadow, but he could feel its weight. It was lighter than air, but it displaced vibrations. A pocket of absence in his seismic map. Interesting. Dark Shadow lunged. Izuku raised both arms and pulled. The arena walls, metal-reinforced concrete, groaned. The overhead lights, mounted on steel fixtures, screamed as their bolts twisted. Then the lights exploded. Not from power surges, from metal bending. Izuku crushed every lighting fixture in the arena simultaneously, plunging the ring into stadium daylight only. The focused, high-intensity spotlights that had been creating shadows were gone. Dark Shadow, exposed to uniform light from every direction, shrunk to half its size. Tokoyami paled. Izuku stomped. A rock pillar caught Tokoyami in the chest and launched him out of bounds. 4 seconds. Midoriya wins again. And he just destroyed the arena lighting to do it. Is that even legal? Midnight checked the rulebook. There's no rule against environmental manipulation. There isn't? There is now, Aizawa muttered. The semifinal, Izuku versus Bakugo. The arena crackled, literally. Bakugo was already sweating, already sparking, already furious. He had been waiting for this since he was 4 years old, since the playground, since the earth swallowed his legs and a blind kid grinned at him. Izuku walked in, barefoot, hands behind his back, head tilted. 80,000 people held their breath. "Start!" Bakugo launched, maximum velocity, explosions propelling him forward like a missile, right hand cocked back for a devastating blast. Izuku stood still. Bakugo closed the distance. 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. His palm was inches from Izuku's face, sparking with enough nitroglycerin sweat to blow a hole in a wall. Izuku shifted his right foot. 2 inches to the left, a stone pillar erupted from the floor directly in Bakugo's flight path. He hit its stomach first at full speed. The impact was a sickening crunch that echoed through the stadium. His momentum stopped dead. His explosion detonated harmlessly against the stone, scorching the surface but leaving the pillar intact. Bakugo folded around the pillar like a rag doll, the wind driven from his lungs. He slid to the ground, gasping. Izuku had not unclasped his hands. "Come on, Sparky," he said. "I felt that one coming since you stepped into the ring." Bakugo roared. He was up in a second, pain ignored, rage fueling every cell. He charged again, low this time, zigzagging, using explosions to change direction unpredictably. Unpredictable. To someone with eyes, Izuku felt every step, every micro-explosion, every shift in weight and trajectory. Bakugo was fast and erratic, but his feet still touched the ground, and every time they did, Izuku knew exactly where he would go next. Bakugo feinted left, blasted right, and came in from Izuku's blind side. Izuku did not have a blind side. He tapped his heel. The ground beneath Bakugo's right foot rose 3 inches. Bakugo stumbled, a fraction of a second of imbalance. Izuku punished it. A wave of compressed stone rolled toward Bakugo at hip height, catching him mid-stumble and sweeping his legs. Bakugo went airborne, but not by choice. He tumbled, fired explosions to right himself, and landed in a crouch. Stay still and fight me, Bakugo screamed. I am still, Izuku said. He had not moved from his original position. You're the one bouncing around. Bakugo snapped. He brought both hands together. The sweat on his palms ignited, a massive, concentrated blast aimed directly at Izuku. The fireball was 3 meters wide and closing fast. Izuku drove his foot down. A wall of earth rose in front of him. But not ordinary earth. He compacted it. Layers of stone compressed so tightly the surface gleamed. The explosion hit the wall and detonated. Fire and smoke billowed outward. The wall cracked but held. Through the smoke, Izuku stepped forward. For the first time in the match, he moved from his starting position. He unclasped his hands. The crowd gasped. It was the smallest gesture, but everyone who had watched him fight knew what it meant. Hands behind the back meant he was in control. Hands free meant he was done playing. The ground around Bakugo responded. Stone rose on every side, walls, pillars, spikes, closing in like the jaws of a trap. Bakugo blasted upward, escaping the enclosure. But there was no escape up there. Izuku raised his right hand. The metal railing around the arena's perimeter ripped free, 100 feet of steel, and shot toward Bakugo like a thrown spear. The metal wrapped around his torso midair, pinning his arms to his sides. Bakugo's explosions fired, but his palms were pressed against his own body by the metal bands. Each detonation scorched his own costume. He fell. Izuku caught him. A stone platform rose from the arena floor and intercepted Bakugo's descent, lowering him gently to the ground. Still wrapped in metal, still struggling. Izuku walked over. He stood above Bakugo. His milky eyes looked down, seeing nothing, knowing everything. You've gotten stronger since we were kids, Izuku said. But the gap hasn't closed, Sparky. It's gotten wider. Bakugo strained against the metal. His teeth were bared. Veins stood out on his neck, but he could not move. Midnight, Izuku said. He can't fight. Midnight assessed. Bakugo was immobilized. No movement possible. Bakugo is unable to continue. Midoriya wins! The crowd erupted. Bakugo's face was a war, rage, frustration, and something buried deeper that looked a lot like despair. Izuku felt it in his heartbeat. The bitter, grinding recognition of absolute defeat. Izuku waved his hand. The metal unwrapped. Bakugo dropped to the arena floor, breathing hard. Izuku turned and walked away. No victory pose, no trash talk. The fight had said everything. Behind him, Kirishima was in the stands, fist raised. Let's go, Midoriya! That was insane! Kaminari was clutching his head with both hands. He wrapped him in the railing. He bent the railing, like it was aluminum foil. Momo's hand was over her mouth. Her eyes were calculating, analyzing. The level of control to manipulate metal at that speed, at that precision, while simultaneously raising stone formations, his multitasking ability is inhuman. Jiro was in the stands. Her earphone jacks were still. Her eyes were fixed on the arena. Her heartbeat was doing that complex rhythm again, the one Izuku had noticed on the rooftop. Fast, warm, proud. She didn't cheer. She didn't need to. She just watched him walk out of the arena with his hands behind his back, and she smiled. The final match, Izuku Midoriya versus Shoto Todoroki. The entire stadium was vibrating. Not from a quirk, from 80,000 people stomping, clapping, and screaming. The energy was a physical force. Todoroki walked into the arena from the east entrance. His expression was ice, left side, right side. Fire and frost divided down the middle of a boy who had been broken by his father and rebuilt himself into something incomplete. Izuku walked in from the west, barefoot, hands behind his back, head tilted. The two of them stood on opposite ends of the ring. Present Mike was losing his voice. This is it, folks, the final match. Izuku Midoriya, the blind earthbender who has dominated every single event today, versus Shoto Todoroki, son of the number 2 hero Endeavor, ice and fire against earth and stone. In the stands, Endeavor leaned forward. His flames burned hotter. Izuku felt him. That blazing heartbeat, furious and possessive, fixated on his son. He filed it away. Todoroki, Izuku said. His voice was conversational, like they were talking over lunch. Before we start, I've got a question. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. What? I can feel your heartbeat, both sides. The right side, the ice side, beats strong, steady. That's your rhythm. That's you. He paused. The left side beats different, heavier, angrier, like it belongs to someone else. Todoroki's jaw clenched. You're only using half of yourself, Izuku said. And I can feel that the half you're using isn't even the half you're afraid of. You don't know anything about me. I know your father is in the stands and his heartbeat sounds exactly like the left side of yours. I know you haven't used Fire all tournament, and I know your pulse spikes every time someone mentions Endeavor. He tilted his head. So yeah, daddy issues. I get it. Todoroki's temperature dropped. Frost crept across the arena floor from his right foot. Don't talk about things you don't understand, Todoroki said. His voice was flat, but his heart was hammering. Then make me understand. Fight me with everything, both sides. Or I'll put you down so fast your old man won't even have time to be disappointed. Start! Todoroki attacked immediately. A glacier. Massive. 20 feet tall, 50 feet wide, a rolling wave of ice that consumed the arena floor and surged toward Izuku with the force of an avalanche. Izuku drove his right heel into the ground. The stone beneath the glacier superheated. Lava erupted in a line across the arena, cutting the glacier in half. The ice hit the magma and exploded into steam, a white wall of scalding vapor that billowed upward, obscuring the entire ring. Visibility. 0, which meant nothing to Izuku. He could feel Todoroki through the steam. The boy was moving right, circling, sending ice along the ground in tendrils, trying to freeze Izuku's feet. Izuku shifted. The ice touched the ground around him and the ground rejected it, warming just enough to melt the frost before it reached his toes. He stomped. A stone pillar shot from the floor toward Todoroki's position. Todoroki dodged left, built an ice wall, braced behind it. Izuku punched the ground. The pillar redirected, curved around the ice wall like a snake, and caught Todoroki in the side. He flew, hit the arena floor, rolled, and came up on one knee. Use your left side? Izuku said through the steam. This is boring. Todoroki's right hand hit the floor. A glacier erupted from beneath Izuku, a massive spike of ice aimed at his torso. Izuku was already gone. He had felt the ice forming underground and sidestepped before it emerged. The glacier exploded from the floor and hit nothing. I can feel your ice forming underground before you launch it, Izuku said. Your quirk works through the ground. My entire existence is the ground. You're sending me a telegram before every attack. Todoroki's face twisted. He was out of options. His right side was powerful but predictable. Every ice attack traveled through the earth before reaching Izuku, and Izuku read the earth like a book. Use your fire, Izuku said, or lose. I will never use his power. It's not his power. It's yours. Izuku paused. He could feel it. The war inside Todoroki. The heartbeat stuttering between two rhythms, tearing itself apart. I was born blind. Do you think I sat around crying about what I didn't have? I built something from nothing. I turned the worst hand you can be dealt into the strongest power on this planet. He stomped. The steam cleared. They faced each other across the wrecked arena. Ice and lava and shattered stone between them. Your fire is yours, Todoroki, not his. And if you don't use it, I'm going to win this fight in the next 30 seconds and you'll walk out of here knowing you lost because you were too scared to be whole. He planted both feet. So make your choice. Full power or full regret. Todoroki stood. The ice on his right side was building. His breath came in clouds. His eyes were wide, raw, stripped of every defense, and then, slowly like a sunrise, the left side ignited. Fire. Real fire. A pillar of flame that erupted from Todoroki's left side, raging upward, melting the remaining ice, turning the arena into a furnace. His hair whipped in the heat. His eyes blazed. In the stands, Endeavor stood. His face was transfixed. Shoto! He roared. Yes! That's it! Todoroki did not hear his father. His entire focus was on Izuku. You wanted this, Todoroki said. Fire and ice swirled around him, the full power of the son of the number 1 and number 2 heroes. You asked for everything. Izuku grinned. The real grin, the one from the playground, the one that said, now it's interesting. Now we're talking. Todoroki launched. Fire from the left, ice from the right. A dual attack, a wave of ice along the ground and a stream of fire above it, converging on Izuku from 2 angles. Izuku stomped with both feet. The arena floor rose around him like a cocoon. Stone and metal from the arena's framework wrapped around his body. Full earth and metal armor. It covered his torso, his arms, his legs, his head. A suit of stone and steel, reinforced and compressed, glowing faintly with residual heat from the lava he had used earlier. The ice hit his armor and froze solid against the stone. The fire hit his armor and washed over it, the metal absorbing and dispersing the heat. Izuku walked forward. Through the fire. Through the ice. One step at a time. the ground cracking under his armored feet. His head visible through the stone helmet, milky green eyes, grinning mouth. He looked like a demon. Todoroki poured everything into it. More fire, more ice. The arena was a war zone of elements. Steam, frost, flame, stone. Izuku kept walking. 5 meters. 3 meters. Todoroki threw one final blast. Everything he had, both sides, fire and ice, merged into a single attack of scorching, freezing energy. It hit Izuku's armor and broke against it. Izuku was in range. He stomped. Todoroki's feet locked into stone. Instant. Tight. Immovable. The boy lurched, his balance gone, his attack stuttering. Izuku pivoted. His right leg, encased in stone and metal, swung around in a roundhouse kick that started from his hip, torqued through his core, and connected with Todoroki's jaw. The impact was a thunderclap. Todoroki's head snapped sideways. His body followed. The stone around his feet crumbled as the force tore him free. He flew 5, 10, 15 feet out of the ring, hit the grass beyond the boundary gate, and did not get up. The arena was silent. Izuku stood in the center of the ring. He breathed out. The stone and metal armor crumbled away from his body, falling in chunks, revealing his sweat-soaked frame beneath. He cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, then he clasped his hands behind his back. Midnight rushed to Todoroki. He was breathing. He was conscious, but he was done. Todoroki is out of bounds and unable to continue. Midnight raised her arm. The winner of the UA Sports Festival is Izuku Midoriya. 1 second of silence. Then 80,000 people exploded. The sound was a physical wall, a roar that shook the stadium's foundation, that traveled through the concrete and the steel and the bedrock beneath it, that reached Izuku's bare feet and told him everything he needed to know. They saw him. All of them. For the first time, the world saw the blind, quirkless boy from Musutafu and understood what he was. He was not broken. He was not fragile. He was not nothing. He was the greatest earthbender in the world. And this was only the beginning. In the stands, Jiro was on her feet. Her earphone jacks were trembling. Her hands were clasped in front of her chest. Her heartbeat was the loudest thing in the stadium, at least to one person. Izuku turned his head toward the stands, toward her section. Toward the precise seat where she was sitting, 300 meters away, he smiled. Not the grin, not the smirk, the real one. The one he saved. She covered her face with her hands, but her jacks were bouncing. And Izuku could feel, through 300 meters of steel and concrete, through 80,000 screaming heartbeats, the one that mattered most. Fast, warm, proud, his. The medal ceremony was brief. Izuku stood on the top podium, gold medal around his neck. All Might placed it there personally, his smile wider than the camera could capture. Young Midoriya, All Might said, leaning close, you have shown the world something extraordinary today. I showed them me, Izuku said. That's always been enough. All Might laughed, big and booming. He patted Izuku on the shoulder. Todoroki stood on the second podium, silver medal. His left side was still warm. His eyes were fixed on Izuku with something that was not hostility. It was curiosity, respect, the beginning of understanding. Bakugo stood on the third podium, bronze. He was gagged because he had tried to bite the official who brought him the medal. His eyes were murder, but his heartbeat told a different story. Underneath the rage was something small and quiet. The sound of a boy who was starting to realize the world was bigger than his ego. Izuku could feel all of it. Every heartbeat, every emotion. Every vibration in the stadium, he lifted the gold medal. The crowd roared. And Izuku Midoriya, blind, quirkless, and standing on top of the world he had bent to his will, let himself enjoy it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he pocketed the medal and walked off the podium. He had more to do. After the ceremony, after the crowds, after the cameras and the interviews and the noise, the 1A dormitory was quiet. Izuku was on the roof again. Same spot. Bare feet on the edge. Night air cooling his skin. The door opened behind him. He felt the footsteps before the door finished swinging. You're predictable, kick drum, he said. Jiro sat down beside him. Close, their arms touching. You won, she said. I did. The whole thing. The whole thing. She was quiet for a moment. Her jacks hung still. Her heartbeat was steady now, that kick drum rhythm he could pick out of 1,000. When you fought Todoroki, she said, what you said to him about being born blind and building something from nothing. What about it? Did you mean it, or was it just to get him to use his fire? Izuku was quiet. He felt the night air, the distant rumble of the city, the pulse of the building beneath them. Both, he said. It was true and it was strategy. Those aren't different things for me. She nodded. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder. His heartbeat, the one she could not feel through the ground but could sense in the warmth of his arm and the steadiness of his breathing, did not change. It stayed the same, consistent, grounded, because she was the one person who did not make his world louder. She made it clearer. Izuku, she said, soft, just his name. Yeah? You're the real deal. He turned his head. His cheek rested against the top of her head. Her hair smelled like coffee and rosewood. Stick with me, Kyoka. It only gets better from here. She laughed. Quiet and warm against his shoulder, he memorized the vibration. Below them, the city hummed. Tef. Above them, stars burned in a sky Izuku could not see. But he could feel the earth turning. He could feel the tectonic plates shifting beneath the Pacific. He could feel the bedrock of Japan stretching east toward dawn. He pressed his bare feet against the concrete and listened to the planet's heartbeat. It was steady. It was strong. It sounded like home. The news hit the next morning. Every hero agency in Japan had watched the sports festival. Every one of them had seen what Izuku did, and every one of them wanted him. Aizawa walked into the 1A classroom with a stack of internship offers thick enough to use as a doorstop. He dropped them on Izuku's desk. 3,211 offers, Aizawa said. A new record. The class stared. 3,000? Kaminari sputtered. Mine was 400, Todoroki said, looking at his own stack. He did not sound upset. He sounded impressed. Bakugo's stack was half the size of Todoroki's. He said nothing. His jaw was locked. Izuku ran his fingers over the top envelope. He could feel the ink through the paper, raised print, expensive stationery. His seismic sense was detailed enough to read Braille, and several agencies had been thoughtful enough to include it. Most of the offers were standard. Mid-tier agencies looking for a star recruit. A few were elite. Best Genist, Hawks, Ryukyu, one was from Endeavor. Izuku set that one aside. Half and half, your dad sent me an offer. Todoroki blinked. Want me to accept it and make his life miserable for a week? The tiniest, most imperceptible hint of a smile crossed Todoroki's face. That would be interesting. I'm joking. I'd rather chew gravel. Izuku tossed the offer over his shoulder. No offense to your old man. Actually, full offense. Todoroki almost laughed. Almost. Izuku chose an agency nobody expected. A small, underground outfit run by a retired hero named Granite, a woman who had spent her career working disaster relief, earthquake rescue, and geological survey. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't famous, but her internship offer was handwritten in Braille, and the first line read, "I've seen what you can do. I want to see what you'll become." He accepted immediately. But the internships were a week away. And in between the sports festival and the real world, there was a window of something rare at U normalcy, or whatever passed for normalcy when your class contained a blind earthbender who could melt the building with a thought. The days fell into a rhythm. Morning classes, modern literature, mathematics, English. Afternoon classes, hero training, combat exercises, quirk development. Evenings, study, training, and whatever chaos Kaminari and Mineta stumbled into. Izuku's approach to classes was efficient. He absorbed lectures through the vibrations of the teacher's voice resonating through the floor. He took notes in Braille on a slate he carried. He aced every written exam because his memory was ridiculous. A side effect of processing the world through constant sensory input since age 4. When your brain mapped reality in 3 dimensions through vibration alone, retaining information was secondary to navigating. Hero training was where things got interesting. Aizawa designed exercises specifically to challenge Izuku. He could not erase his abilities, so instead he created scenarios that targeted his weaknesses, if he had any. Midoriya, today's exercise, aerial combat. Izuku stood on the training ground, barefoot, arms crossed. I can't fly. Exactly. Your opponent, Aizawa gestured to Uraraka, who waved nervously, will make you weightless. Fight without the ground. Izuku tilted his head. Then he smiled. Bet. Uraraka touched him. His weight vanished. He drifted upward, disconnected from the earth for the first time since, well, ever. His seismic sense went silent. The world went blank. For a normal person, this would be like losing their sight. For Izuku, who was already blind, it was like losing his sight. He floated, 3 feet off the ground, 5 feet, 10. The class watched. Jiro's hands tightened on the railing. Izuku hung in the air. His expression was calm, but his jaw was tight. No vibrations, no feedback, no map. He was floating in absolute sensory emptiness. Then he moved his hand, a piece of stone, a chunk he had quietly broken from the training ground before Uraraka touched him, sat in his pocket. He pulled it out, held it in his palm, felt its weight, its composition, its connection to the earth he could no longer feel. He pressed the stone to the sole of his bare foot. A thread, thin, faint, but there. The stone connected him to the planet's magnetic field. He could not feel the ground, but he could feel the stone, and through the stone, he could feel a ghost of the world below. He curled his toes around the stone. His seismic map flickered back. Weak, fragile, like watching television through static. But it was enough. He twisted in the air, kicked off nothing, literally nothing, by launching the stone downward with earthbending and riding the kinetic reaction upward. Newton's third law with rocks instead of engines. Aizawa's eyes widened. Izuku was flying. Sort of. Leaping between stone platforms he created and launched in midair, each one giving him a split second of contact before he kicked off it and onto the next. It looked insane. It looked impossible. It looked like a blind man tap dancing across the sky. He landed on the training ground 30 seconds later. The stone crumbled beneath his feet. His seismic sense roared back to full power. He dusted his hands. That, he said, sucked, but I made it work. Aizawa stared at him for a long moment. Then he wrote something in his notebook. What did you write? Izuku asked. Adaptation speed, inhuman. I'll take it. The internship week came and went. Izuku spent it with Granite, the retired hero, in a mountain region south of Hokkaido. She did not train him in combat. She did not teach him moves. She taught him the earth, not how to fight with it, how to listen to it. You're powerful, Granite said. She was 60, silver hair, hands like tree roots. But power without understanding is just destruction. Izuku sat cross-legged on a cliff face, feet pressed to the stone, feeling the mountain breathe. This mountain is 400 million years old, Granite said. It has survived volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, ice ages, and human development. It is patient. It endures. That is what the earth teaches. I'm not great at patience, Izuku admitted. No, you're not. But you'll learn, because the earth will be here long after you're gone, and the part of it that lives in you will determine what kind of hero you become. He sat with that, not for long. He was still Izuku, but he sat with it. When the internship ended, he returned to UA with something he had not had before. Not more power, but more depth. A sense that the ground beneath his feet was not just a weapon, it was a legacy, and he was its keeper. He would never admit this out loud. He had a reputation to maintain, but Jiro noticed. She always did. You're different, she said the first evening back. They were in the common room. Same couch, same positions. Her guitar, his feet on the table. Different how? Quieter. Not less confident, just deeper. He tilted his head. Deeper, like you're listening to something you weren't before. He smiled. Granite said the earth is 400 million years old and I should learn patience. Did you? I learned what she meant. I'll work on the execution. She strummed a chord. Low. Resonant. The vibration traveled through the couch and into his body. That's a D minor, he said. Since when do you know chords? Since I started memorizing the vibration patterns of every note you play. He paused. I've got a catalog. D minor is your go-to when you're thinking, G major when you're happy, B flat when you're frustrated, A minor when you miss home. She stopped playing. Her heartbeat did the complicated thing. She set the guitar down. You memorized my music by vibration? Every note, every song, every chord progression. That's creepy? Probably. I was going to say beautiful. He went still. Jiro's cheeks were red, but her voice was steady. Nobody's ever listened to me like that. Most people hear music. You feel it. It's the only way I can experience it. It's the best way. She picked up the guitar again. Play me a request. Something in A minor. You just said that's what I play when I miss home. I know. I want to hear it. She played, and he listened. Not with his ears, with his feet, with his bones, with the part of him that the earth had built from the ground up. When she finished, the common room was empty. Everyone else had gone to bed. She set the guitar down and leaned against him. His arm came up and around her shoulders. Natural. Inevitable, like the earth settling after a tremor. Izuku. Yeah? I like you. I know. She punched his arm. You're supposed to say it back, you jerk. Your heartbeat already knows how I feel. It changes when I'm near you. Yours changes when I'm near you. We've been on the same frequency since the day I bumped into you on those stairs. That wasn't an accident, was it? I felt your heartbeat from 100 meters away and changed my path to intercept it. So no, it was not an accident. She covered her face with her hands, her jacks curled. Her cheeks were nuclear. You are the most infuriating person I have ever met. And you are the only heartbeat in this world I would rearrange my path for. He pulled her closer. She let him. Stick with me, Kyoka. It's better when you're here. She tucked her head under his chin. Her jacks rested against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat directly now, not through the ground, through his ribs, steady, strong, warm, hers. They stayed like that until the common room lights clicked off on their auto timer and the building settled into its nighttime frequency. Cooling pipes, ventilation hum, 20 sleeping heartbeats stacked in the rooms above them. Jiro fell asleep against his chest. He knew the exact moment it happened because her pulse shifted. Slower, deeper. The kick drum easing into a resting tempo that resonated through his ribs like a song she did not know she was playing. He did not move. He sat perfectly still and memorized the weight of her against him, the way her jacks curled when she was dreaming, the small involuntary twitch of her left hand against his shirt. He carried her to her room, not with the earth, with his arms. He laid her on the bed, pulled the blanket up to her shoulders, and stood in the doorway for 3 seconds longer than necessary. Then he went back downstairs, pressed his bare feet to the common room floor, and felt the building breathe. It was the last quiet night they would have for a long time. 2 weeks later, Hosu City caught fire. Izuku was not supposed to be in Hosu. He was supposed to be finishing a weekend field observation in Yokohama, a follow-up assignment from Aizawa's practical operations class. Survey a neighborhood, map its emergency evacuation routes, write a report. Simple, boring. The kind of assignment Izuku could finish with 1 foot while sleeping. He finished in 40 minutes and had the rest of the day. He could have gone back to UA. He could have called Jiro, who was doing her own observation assignment in Kiyashi Ward, and had already texted him 3 complaints about a curry place that got her order wrong. Instead, he took the train south, not for any particular reason, just a feeling. A hum in the rails beneath the train car, a resonance in the tracks that felt wrong in a way he could not articulate, something pulling. Izuku had learned to trust the pull. He stepped off the train in Hosu at 6:47 in the evening, barefoot on the station platform, and the city spread out beneath his feet like an open book. 40,000 heartbeats in his range. Traffic vibrations. Water mains. Electrical conduit thrumming through underground channels. A living city going about its evening, and 3 blocks north moving through a side street with the deliberate pace of someone who had somewhere to be and someone to bleed when he got there. A heartbeat unlike any Izuku had ever felt. Slow. Measured. Heavy with intent. Not anxious. Not angry. Certain. The heartbeat of a man who had already decided what he was going to do tonight and felt no conflict about it whatsoever. Izuku tilted his head. He had read the news. Everyone had. The hero killer, Stain, had carved a path through 6 cities in the past 3 months, leaving paralyzed pro-heroes bleeding in alleys, carving ideology into their skin with a blade that tasted blood and locked muscles. 17 heroes down, 3 dead. The rest would never walk without assistance again. Izuku started walking. He did not run. He never ran toward a fight. Running was for people who were afraid they would arrive too late. Izuku always arrived exactly when the Earth told him to, 4 blocks north, 3 blocks east. A narrow alley between 2 commercial buildings, dumpsters lining one wall, a single overhead light flickering. The heartbeat he was tracking had stopped moving. It was joined by a second heartbeat, faster, weaker, laced with pain. A pro-hero. Downed. Izuku rounded the corner. The alley was tight, 6 feet wide at most. Stain stood at the center, his back to Izuku, 1 boot on the chest of a man in a torn hero costume. The pro was pinned to the ground, a blade through his shoulder, blood pooling under the flickering light. Stain had a second blade in his hand, a katana, chipped and stained along the edge, raised for what would have been a killing blow. Izuku pressed his bare toes to the alley floor and read everything. The pro hero, male, late 30s, 185 pounds. His heartbeat was struggling but holding. There was a ring on his left hand, a wedding band, the faint impression of inscribed metal. And in the inner pocket of his coat, pressed against his chest, something small and warm was vibrating. A phone. 2 contact photos on the lock screen that Izuku could not see but could feel through the vibrations of the device. A woman and a child. The phone was buzzing because someone was calling. His family was calling. "That guy behind you is a pro hero," Izuku said. Stain froze. The katana did not come down. "He has a wife and at least 1 kid. I can feel the ring and the phone going off in his coat. Somebody is trying to reach him right now." Stain turned his head. Slowly. The movement was a coiled spring releasing 1 click at a time. He looked over his shoulder at the barefoot teenager standing at the mouth of the alley with his hands clasped behind his back and his milky green eyes aimed at nothing. "Walk away, child," Stain said. His voice was rough. "Sandpaper and purpose. This does not concern you. His name is probably not worth dying for," Izuku continued, "but he's gonna die anyway if you don't step back." Stain did not step back. He pivoted. Fast. Faster than his leanness suggested. The katana came around in a horizontal slash aimed at Izuku's throat. Izuku tapped his right heel against the alley floor. A slab of stone erupted from the ground between them. 4 feet tall, 2 feet thick, timed to intercept the blade's arc. The katana hit the stone and rang out like a bell. Sparks flew. The impact traveled through the stone, through the alley floor, and Izuku read every ounce of force behind it. Strong. This man was genuinely strong. Stain pulled the blade back and launched himself over the stone barrier, airborne, a second knife appearing in his left hand. He was trying to close the gap. Get within arm's reach. Get blood. Izuku stomped. The alley floor rippled. Both walls, brick and concrete, convulsed outward and then slammed inward, narrowing the already tight space by 2 feet on each side. Stain, midair, found his landing zone, compressed. He twisted, adapted, landed on the edge of a dumpster, and kicked off it toward Izuku's head. A pillar of bedrock punched upward from the floor directly in Stain's flight path. It caught him in the ribs. The impact was a wet crunch that echoed off both walls. Stain folded around the pillar, his momentum redirected from horizontal to vertical. He sailed upward, hit the brick wall 10 feet up, and rebounded off it. He landed on his feet. He was bleeding from the mouth. He was smiling. "You fight with the earth," Stain said. He wiped his lip with the back of his hand. "The blind one from the sports festival. Glad my reputation precedes me." Stain charged, low and direct this time, blade flat against his forearm, using the tight alley to limit Izuku's angles. He was learning, adapting. He had seen fighters use terrain before, and he knew how to cut inside it. He was fast. Genuinely, terrifyingly fast for a man with no speed-enhancing quirk. Just training. Just decades of hunting heroes and surviving the consequences. Izuku shifted his stance, left foot forward, right foot angled. He felt Stain's boots on the concrete, the strike of each step, the weight distribution, the micro adjustments that telegraphed direction changes before they happened. Stain feinted right. His body said right, but his weight was leaning left. Izuku read the lie through the ground and answered it. The concrete beneath Stain's left foot crumbled into a 6-inch pit. His ankle dipped. His stride broke. Half a second of imbalance. A wall of stone erupted from the alley floor, not in front of Stain, but behind him. It slammed into his back, drove him forward off balance, and then the wall in front of him rose too. Stain was sandwiched between 2 slabs of compressed rock, both arms extended outward, both blades still in his hands, but useless. The stone pinned him at the shoulders, the hips, and the thighs. His feet were 6 inches off the ground. He hung there, suspended in stone, breathing hard. Still glaring, Izuku walked forward. Each step was a sonar pulse that read the tension in Stain's muscles, the position of every blade, the rate of his breathing. "You think I'm a fake hero," Izuku said. He stopped 3 feet from the pinned man. "Tell me why." Stain's eyes burned. They were red in the way that conviction was red, not rage, but fire that had been fed so long it had forgotten what cold felt like. "Because the system that makes heroes is rotten," Stain said. "Because every year 100 new graduates walk out of schools like yours wearing capes they don't deserve and carrying licenses they bought with their parents' money. Because the word hero has been hollowed out, and filled with sponsorship deals and merchandise and Instagram followers, and he strained against the stone. The stone did not give. The only real hero in this country is All Might. Everyone else is a costume wearing a lie. Izuku listened. Not just to the words, to the heartbeat behind them. Steady, unwavering. This man believed every syllable. His pulse did not stutter. His body did not betray a single tell of deception. Izuku was quiet for a moment. "You're right about the system," he said. Stain blinked. "The hero industry is rotten in places. There are people wearing capes who shouldn't be. There are agencies that care more about brand deals than rescues. You're not wrong about that." Stain stared at him. "You're wrong about the method," Izuku said. "Killing the fakes doesn't make the real ones stronger. It just makes you a headline. You've spent 3 months carving through B-list pros, and all you've done is make people afraid. Fear doesn't fix systems. It doesn't build anything. It just makes the rubble louder." He pressed one finger to the wall of stone pinning Stain's chest and hardened it. The stone tightened. Stain grunted. "The guy on the ground behind me? He's got a wedding ring and a kid calling his phone. Maybe he's a bad hero. Maybe he took this job for the paycheck. But his kid doesn't care about that. His wife doesn't care about that. They just want him to come home." Stain's jaw worked. His blades trembled in his grip. "Sleep," Izuku said. The stone closed. It did not crush. It enveloped. Stain's arms were folded against his body. His blades were pressed flat. The rock formed a complete cone from his neck to his feet, seamless and unbreakable, leaving only his head exposed. Stain's eyes found Izuku's, not with hatred, with something closer to recognition. "You might be the real thing," Stain said. His voice was a whisper through the stone. "I am the greatest earthbender in the world," Izuku replied. "I don't need your approval to know that." He turned his back on the hero killer and walked to the downed pro hero. He crouched, felt the man's heartbeat, rough but stabilizing, and pulled the blade from his shoulder with one hand while pressing the other to the alley floor. A compress of heated stone formed around the wound, cauterizing the worst of the bleeding. The pro hero stared up at him. Who are you?" "Nobody official," Izuku said. He stood. "Yet." He pulled his phone from his pocket and called the police. Then he called UA. Then he walked out of the alley, bare feet pressing into the Hosu sidewalk, and disappeared into the evening crowd before the first sirens arrived. The footage hit the news within the hour. Someone in the building across from the alley had a camera pointed at the street. They caught everything. The sound of the fight, the eruption of stone walls, and the final image of Stain entombed in rock, blinking in the flickering alley light while a barefoot teenager walked away without looking back. "The hero killer has been apprehended," the anchor said, and then stumbled over the next part, because the next part did not make sense, by what appears to be a UA student, unassisted. Social media went nuclear. The sports festival footage resurfaced. Side-by-side comparisons, threads that ran thousands of posts long. The hashtag #BlindBandit trended for 48 consecutive hours. At UA, Shota Aizawa sat in his office staring at the incident report on his desk. He had read it 3 times. He was developing a headache that started behind his left eye and worked its way toward his temples with the patience of an advancing army. The report was 2 pages. The first page was the police account. The second was a witness statement. At the bottom, in the notes section, someone had written, "Student identified as Izuku Midoriya, Class 1A, UA High School. No injuries sustained. Student was not on an approved assignment in Hosu City at the time of the incident." Aizawa rubbed his temples. The next morning, he pulled Izuku aside before class. "You were in Hosu," Aizawa said. His voice was flat. "I was in Yokohama. Finished early. Took a train. You took a train to Hosu City and single-handedly captured the most wanted criminal in the country. He was in my way." Aizawa stared at him. The silence lasted 7 full seconds. Then detention. 1 week. Worth it, Izuku said, and a commendation from the HPSC for civilian heroics. Also worth it. "Get out of my office." Izuku left. Jiro was leaning against the wall outside the door, arms crossed, deck, one earphone jack wrapped around her own finger in a fidget she probably did not realize she had. "Detention?" she asked. 1 week. "You captured the hero killer in an alley and got detention. The system works in mysterious ways." She fell into step beside him. Their shoulders brushed. "The news is calling you the blind bandit." "I heard." You like it. It's accurate. She punched his arm. He caught her fist again, wrapped his fingers around her knuckles and held on for 2 steps before releasing. Stay grounded. Kick drum, he said. Big year ahead. He had no idea how right he was. Summer arrived the way it always does. Sudden and overheated and full of plans that nobody would get to finish. Class 1A was shipped to a training camp in the densely forested mountains west of Musutafu. The wild, wild pussycats were hosting. The camp was designed to push every student past their limits over the course of a brutal, sweat-soaked, sleep-deprived week. For Izuku, it was a vacation. He stepped off the bus and his bare feet hit the forest floor, and the entire mountain range opened itself to him. Every tree trunk, every root system, every underground stream, the footsteps of deer a half-kilometer south, the burrow of a fox family under an ancient cedar. The slow grinding of tectonic plates miles below the surface, ancient and unbothered. He took a breath, and the forest breathed with him. "You've got that look," Jiro said, stepping off the bus behind him. "What look?" "The look where you're already mapping everything and feeling superior about it." "I'm not feeling superior. I'm feeling everything within a 2-kilometer radius. The superiority is a bonus." She rolled her eyes, but her jacks bounced, which meant she was smiling on the inside. The pussycats ran them ragged. Bakugo fought rock golems with his bare hands. Todoroki practiced rapid cycle ice and fire generation until steam clouded the entire eastern training ground. Kirishima sat under a waterfall and let it pound him into harder and harder states. Uraraka floated herself until she threw up, rested for 10 minutes, and floated again. Izuku's assigned training: expand his seismic range while under physical duress. The pussycat's earth manipulation hero, Tiger, threw him off a cliff face repeatedly, while Izuku was supposed to maintain a constant seismic map of the forest. Every time he hit the ground, his concentration broke, and he had to rebuild the map from scratch in the time it took to stand up. By day 3, he could rebuild his full 2-kilometer map in under a second, even while falling. Tiger called it progress. Izuku called it mildly inconvenient. The nights were good. The class ate together around a fire. Kaminari told bad jokes. Kirishima arm wrestled everyone. Momo produced marshmallows from her body, which was both impressive and slightly disturbing. Todoroki sat at the edge of the group closer than he used to, which was its own kind of progress. Jiro played guitar. The fire crackled. Izuku sat on the ground, feet in the dirt, feeling the mountain settle into its nighttime rhythm. On the 4th night, at 11:43 p.m., the mountain's rhythm changed. Izuku was lying in his sleeping bag, feet pressed flat against the cabin floor. The other boys were asleep. Kaminari snoring, Bakugo grinding his teeth, Ida sleeping at rigid attention. Through the floor, through the foundation, through the soil and the rock beneath, Izuku felt footsteps. 24 sets, moving in 2 groups of 12, east and west, converging. They were not campers. Campers walked with flat feet and relaxed gaits. These footsteps were weighted forward. Ball of the foot, first. Quiet. Deliberate. The walk of people who did not want to be heard. Izuku sat up. He pressed both palms to the floor and sent a deep pulse through the bedrock. The mountain answered. The pulse bounced back with the full picture. 12 figures from the east, moving through the undergrowth in a spread formation. 12 from the west, same formation. They were carrying heavy objects, weapons, equipment. Something bulky on the back of the lead figure from the east that pulsed with a foreign vibration, a device maybe. Something that hummed. His pulse quickened, not with fear, with recognition. This was an assault. He was out of the sleeping bag, out of the cabin, and barefoot on the forest floor in under 4 seconds. His feet sank into the loam, and the full map lit up in his mind. Every tree, every student, every incoming body. He pressed his heel into the dirt and sent a vibration through the camp's foundations, a targeted, low-frequency pulse that would rattle the floorboards of every cabin. Not enough to break anything. Enough to wake up anyone who was a light sleeper. Aizawa was out of his cabin in 8 seconds, capture weapon already in hand. His hair was loose and his eyes were red. He had been sleeping with one eye open, figuratively, probably literally. "How many?" Aizawa said. He did not question how Izuku knew. He was past that. 24. 2 groups, closing from east and west, 10 minutes out. Students, all in cabins, all alive, some are waking up. Aizawa activated his communicator. All staff, code red, 24 hostiles approaching from east and west flanks. Get the students to the central clearing. Now. The forest erupted. Mustard came first, a villain in a gas mask who blanketed the western approach in a thick, poisonous fog. It rolled through the trees like a tide flood, opaque and suffocating. Two students who were stumbling out of their cabins, Kaminari and Jiro, hit the edge of the gas and started coughing. Izuku was already moving. He stomped both feet into the ground, and the earth beneath the gas cloud compressed upward, a 6-foot wall of packed soil that sealed across the approach like a dam. The gas hit the wall and had nowhere to go. It pooled on the villain's side, contained. Then the wall tilted forward and fell. Mustard, standing behind his own gas cloud, did not see the wall coming until a ton of compacted earth slammed him flat. The gas mask cracked, his body pressed into the forest floor. The gas dissipated without its source. Izuku did not stop. He was already running. The east flank was worse. 3 villains broke through the tree line simultaneously. One had a blade quirk, arms that extended into swords. One had a hardening ability, skin like cement. The third was throwing compressed air blasts that shattered tree trunks. Izuku crossed 50 meters of forest floor in 4 seconds, reading every root and rock as he ran. The blade villain saw him and swung. Izuku ducked, pressed his palm to a tree trunk, and the roots beneath it tore free from the earth and wrapped the blade villain's legs. The man went down screaming. The hardened villain charged. Izuku stomped and a pillar of bedrock caught the man in the sternum and carried him 30 feet backward into a boulder. The air blast villain fired. Izuku raised a wall of stone. The blast hit the wall and the wall ate it. 3 down. 6 seconds. I am the greatest earthbender in the world, Izuku said to the empty forest, and you picked the wrong mountain. He felt his classmates fighting across the camp. Todoroki was holding the northern approach with walls of ice. Bakugo was in the eastern woods, explosions popping like fireworks. Kirishima and Tetsutetsu were back-to-back near the central clearing, taking hits and giving them back harder. He felt something bigger, north of the camp, moving through the trees with the weight of a truck and the heartbeat of a freight train. Massive, dense, muscle layered over muscle, a body that had been engineered for destruction. Muscular. Izuku changed direction. He found the villain in a clearing 200 meters north of the camp. Muscular was enormous, 8 feet tall with his muscle fibers extended, a mountain of pulsing tissue and raw power. He had a boy pinned against a tree. Koda, the pussycat's ward, a small child who had snuck out of camp and wandered into the worst possible corner of the forest. Muscular had one hand around the tree trunk and was pulling it out of the ground by the roots. Koda was screaming. "Let the kid go," Izuku said. Muscular turned. His exposed eye found Izuku, barefoot, hands at his sides, standing in the moonlight. "You're the blind kid from the sports festival," Muscular said. He laughed. It was the sound of a garbage disposal chewing gravel. "How are you going to fight me if you can't see?" "I don't need to see you. I can feel your heartbeat, your muscle density, and the exact weight distribution on your feet." Izuku tilted his head. "Your left foot is carrying 63% of your weight. Your right ACL is damaged. Old injury, maybe 6 months. You've been compensating with your left quad, which is why your stance is uneven." He dropped into a horse stance, both feet wide, palms down. "Want me to finish the job?" Muscular dropped the tree. Koda tumbled free and scrambled behind a boulder. Muscular charged. He was fast for his size. Absurdly fast. He crossed the clearing in 2 steps and swung a fist wrapped in muscle fibers that hit like a wrecking ball. Izuku raised a wall of stone. The fist went through it, completely through it. The wall exploded in a shower of rubble that pelted the trees behind Izuku. The shockwave knocked him back 3 steps. The first real hit he had taken all night, he processed it in the space between heartbeats. The force behind that punch was staggering. This was not a thug. This was a genuine monster. Muscular pressed the advantage. A second swing, low, aimed at Izuku's midsection. Izuku dropped flat and the fist sailed over his head. He pressed both palms to the earth and the forest floor erupted. A wave of soil and rock that surged upward caught Muscular in the chest and drove him backward. But Muscular dug his feet in. His muscle fibers expanded, anchored him. The wave broke against him like water against a dam. He laughed. That tickled. Izuku was already up. He stomped, and a pillar caught Muscular's damaged right knee. The villain buckled a fraction, and Izuku punished it with a second pillar to the ribs. Muscular swatted it away. His arm destroyed the stone like it was made of crackers. "You hit hard, kid," Muscular said, "but I can take anything you throw." Izuku stood still. He read the villain through the ground. Muscle fibers layered 10 inches deep across his body. A living suit of armor made of his own tissue. Brute force was not going to work. Not from the outside. Fine. Izuku shifted his stance. He drove his right heel into the forest floor, hard. Harder than he had hit anything today. The ground answered. Not with a wall. Not with a pillar. With a sound. A deep rolling vibration that started at his foot and spread outward through the bedrock in every direction. The trees shook. The ground hummed. Every loose stone within 50 meters rattled. And Muscular's muscle fibers, made of tissue, made of water and protein and biological material that responded to vibration like every other soft thing in the world, began to shake. Muscular's eyes widened. His fibers were vibrating. Not from a hit, from resonance. The frequency Izuku was pumping through the ground was tuned to the density of muscle tissue, and it was shaking the villain's armor from the inside out. What? What are you? Izuku stomped again. Harder. The resonance doubled. Muscular's fibers began to loosen, separating from each other, losing cohesion. The villain staggered. His massive body was coming apart at the seams, the layered muscle unraveling like yarn. Izuku drove both heels into the ground and unleashed everything. The clearing collapsed. The earth opened in a circle around Muscular. Not a sinkhole, but a compression. The ground rose on all sides, walls of stone slamming together from every direction, closing in on the villain like a closing fist. Muscular roared and swung his arms, smashing through the first wall, the second, but the third was denser. The fourth was reinforced with bedrock. The fifth was compressed so tightly it hummed. 20 meters of stone. From all directions. Closing, Muscular's roar became a muffled scream. The stone sealed. The ground bulged upward like a blister, and then settled. Silence. Izuku stood at the edge of the sealed crater, breathing hard. His feet were bleeding from stomping on exposed roots and rocks. His ribs ached from the shockwave of Muscular's first punch, but the villain was buried, deep, alive. Izuku could feel his heartbeat through the stone, muffled and furious, but buried so deep that getting out would require industrial equipment and a week's head start. Kota peered out from behind his boulder. His eyes were the size of the moon. Izuku turned to him. "You okay, kid? You just, yeah, stay here. Someone will come get you." He turned back toward the camp. His feet read the battle, still raging but shifting. The villains were losing ground. Aizawa and the Pussycats were pushing the eastern flank back. Todoroki's ice was spreading across the northern approach like a glacier. Then he felt it. 2 heartbeats, he knew. Close together. Both panicked. One was Jiro's kick drum, but it was wrong. Too fast. Erratic. The rhythm she always carried, the one he had memorized, cataloged, and used as his compass, was breaking apart. The second heartbeat was Tokoyami's, also panicked, also wrong. And a third presence, not a heartbeat but a void. A man who moved without weight, who touched the ground so lightly that Izuku's seismic map barely registered him. A magician, a trickster, compress. Izuku felt the void man's hand close around something, a click, a compression, and Jiro's heartbeat vanished from his map. Not faded, not moved, vanished. Like someone had turned off a radio mid-song, Izuku's entire body went still. For 1 second, the greatest earthbender in the world stood in a moonlit clearing and felt the absence of the only heartbeat that had ever made his world clearer. Then, he ran. He did not ride the earth. He did not surf a wave or launch himself from a pillar. He ran, bare feet tearing through the forest floor, every step reading the ground ahead of him, branches and rocks and roots becoming a blur of data that his legs navigated on instinct. Compress was moving northeast, fast, the void-like footsteps skipping through the trees with the lightness of a man who did not need the ground to escape. But Izuku did not need to see him. He needed to catch him. And the forest was his. Every root between Izuku and the tree line ripped free from the soil and reached. They grabbed at Compress's ankles, at his coat, at his hat. The villain danced through them, agile, frustratingly skilled. But each root that missed slowed him by a fraction. Izuku closed the gap. 200 meters, 150, 100. Compress reached the tree line, open ground beyond, a gravel road where a vehicle was waiting. Izuku stomped. The ground beneath Compress erupted upward with the force of a detonation. 15 meters of vertical stone, a pillar that launched the villain into the sky like a cork from a bottle. Compress's arms pinwheeled. His mask slipped. 2 small marbles, the compressed forms of Jiro and Tokoyami, spilled from his fingers and tumbled through the night air. Izuku raised both hands. The earth answered. 2 platforms of packed soil rose from the forest floor, positioned directly beneath the falling marbles, catching them on cushioned surfaces as gently as a palm catching a raindrop. Compress crashed back down through the branches of a pine tree and hit the ground in a heap. Before he could stand, the soil around him hardened into a coffin that left only his face exposed. Izuku did not look at him. He was already at the platforms. The marbles. He could feel their density. Compressed space. Something impossible folded into something tiny. He did not know how to undo the compression. He did not have to. The moment Compress lost consciousness, 3 seconds later, when the stone coffin tightened around his chest and squeezed the air from his lungs just hard enough, the marbles popped. Tokoyami tumbled out of nothing, gasping. Disoriented, Jiro collapsed out of the second marble. She hit the platform and her body went limp for a terrifying half-second before she gasped and her lungs filled and her heartbeat roared back into Izuku's map like a song returning after silence. He was there before she finished falling. His hands, the ones he kept behind his back, the ones he used to end fights and move mountains, were on her face. Palms against her jaw, thumbs on her cheeks. His calloused fingers reading her pulse, her temperature, the rhythm of her blood returning to normal. Alive. In pain. Scared. Alive. Got you, he said. Her eyes, red-rimmed and furious and wet, found his cloudy ones in the moonlight. Her jacks were limp against her shoulders. Her voice was raw. Took you long enough, she said. He almost laughed. His jaw was too tight for it. He held her face for 3 more seconds, reading every rebeat of her heart, making sure it was real, making sure it was hers, making sure the kick drum was still there underneath the fear. It was. He pulled her to her feet. She swayed. He caught her elbow. His hand stayed there. Can you walk? Yeah, good. They walked back to the camp, through the forest, through the aftermath. Villains were being restrained. Students were regrouping. The pussycats were doing head counts. Aizawa, battered and bleeding from a cut above his eye, was issuing orders with the focus of a man who would deal with his own injuries after everyone else was safe. Izuku delivered Jiro and Tokoyami to the central clearing. Jiro sat on a log and accepted a blanket from Momo. Her heartbeat was settling, slower, steadier, coming back to itself. Izuku stood over her for a moment. His hands were at his sides. They were shaking. This was the first time in the story, the first time in his entire life, that Izuku Midoriya's hands shook. Jiro looked up at him. She saw it. She reached out and wrapped both of her hands around his right fist. His shaking stopped. I'm fine, she said. I'm here. He nodded once, then he turned and walked to Aizawa. Muscular is buried in the north clearing. Compress is restrained at the eastern tree line. The gas villain is under a wall in the west approach. I count 6 more hostiles still mobile in the surrounding area. Aizawa looked at him. The man's eyes were red from quirk overuse, and his body language said he was running on adrenaline and stubbornness. 6? Aizawa said. Want me to handle it? Aizawa stared at him for a beat. Then he nodded. Izuku walked back into the forest. 6 minutes later, the remaining 6 villains were encased in stone up to their necks in a neat row along the access road, like fence posts. The League retreated. They had come for a target, someone in the class, someone specific, and they had failed. They had almost gotten Jiro. They had almost gotten Tokoyami. They had not gotten either. Izuku filed that night somewhere deep in his memory, not in the part where he kept victories, in the part where he kept debts. The weeks after the training camp were a pressure cooker. UA doubled security, the HPSC launched investigations, parents threatened lawsuits, the media demanded answers, and quietly, behind closed doors, the Hero Public Safety Commission made a decision about Izuku Midoriya. They were afraid of him. Not openly. They would never say it in a room where anyone could hear. But the transcripts of their meetings would later reveal a recurring phrase: asset management. How to manage a 17-year-old who could melt the ground beneath their feet if he decided they were not worth standing on. Their solution was the Provisional Hero License Exam. Redesigned from the ground up, the standard exam had 3 phases: elimination, rescue, and assessment. The redesigned version, the one built with Izuku in mind, had 5. Aerial stages conducted on elevated platforms with no ground contact. Water-based obstacles where the arena floor was a pool with no exposed stone. Enclosed corridor sections so narrow that large-scale earthbending would collapse the structure on top of him. And a final assessment conducted by a panel of HPSC officials who would ask questions designed to evaluate his temperament, his stability, and his willingness to follow orders. They had engineered an exam to contain him. Izuku walked in barefoot and smiling. The aerial stage was first. Platforms suspended 30 feet above the arena floor. No ground contact. The objective: eliminate 20 targets, other examinees, using only what you had on you. Izuku stood on his platform. His seismic sense was dead. 30 feet of air between his feet and the earth was a void. He had a handful of pebbles in his pocket. He had been carrying pebbles since the training camp. Insurance. Every stone was a tether. Throw it, feel it, use it. He flicked a pebble off his platform. It hit a support beam 10 feet below. The vibration traveled through the steel beam through the arena's framework, and suddenly Izuku had a skeleton map of the entire structure. Every platform, every connection, every examinee's weight pressing down through the system. He smiled. He flicked pebbles at 3 targets in 4 seconds. Not to hit them, to hit the platform beneath their feet. Each pebble was a message, and the message was, "Your platform is mine now." The steel support bolts in the platforms loosened, twisted. 3 platforms tilted 45 degrees and their occupants slid off with matching screams. The aerial stage took him 7 minutes. He eliminated every target by destabilizing their platforms through the steel framework, bending the metal supports with pinpoint control, never once touching the ground. The water stage was next. A pool. No stone floor. Examinees fought waist-deep in water with floating targets. Izuku stood at the pool's edge. He pressed his palm to the tile at the pool's border and read the building's skeleton beneath the water. Rebar in the concrete, drainage pipes under the pool floor, a steel framework holding the whole thing together. He pulled a drainage pipe out of the pool floor. It rose from the water like a sea serpent, 20 feet of steel that whipped through the air under his command. He used it to tag every floating target in 90 seconds, while his opponents were still trying to figure out how the pool was leaking. The enclosed corridors were the Commission's ace. Tight spaces, stone ceilings, walls close enough that any significant earthbending would bring the whole section down. Izuku walked in. Felt the walls. Felt the ceiling. Felt the load-bearing points. He did not bend the walls. He bent the floor. The thin layer of reinforced tile beneath his feet, in ripples so small they were invisible. The ripples traveled ahead of him at the speed of sound. Every examiner standing in his path felt the ground shift beneath their feet by a quarter inch. Not enough to collapse anything. Enough to throw off their balance at the exact moment Izuku stepped around a corner and tapped them with his walking stick, which he had brought specifically for this stage. He tagged every examiner in the corridor section using a stick and a vibration. Total time, 40 minutes. Fastest in the exam's history. The rescue portion was the only part that made him sweat. Not because it was hard, because people were depending on him. 3 buildings had been staged to collapse simultaneously. Inside, 60 actors playing injured civilians. The examinees had to stabilize the structures, locate the survivors, and evacuate them within the time limit. Izuku pressed his palms to the ground outside the first building and read its entire skeletal structure in 2 seconds. Every cracked beam, every failing support, every pocket where a survivor was trapped. He bent the metal rebar inside the walls, reinforcing the failing points from within. The building groaned and then steadied. He raised stone pillars beneath the foundation, shoring up the base. Then he walked inside, barefoot on rubble that told him everything, and directed evacuation teams to every survivor by feeling their heartbeats through the floor. 12 survivors in the first building, 18 in the second, 30 in the third. He stabilized all 3 structures and located every person before the other examinees had finished clearing their first floors. The HPSC panel conducted the final assessment. 3 officials in suits sitting behind a desk, asking questions with the careful phrasing of people who had rehearsed this. "How would you describe your relationship with authority?" they asked. "I respect authority that earns it, and authority that doesn't. I've been told I'm the most dangerous person my age on the planet. Authority that doesn't earn my respect should probably focus on earning it." The panel exchanged glances. They approved his license. They did not have a choice. His scores were inarguable. His rescue performance was flawless, and the alternative, failing the most publicly visible young hero in the country on a technicality, would have been a media disaster. But the commission head, a woman with iron gray hair and a heartbeat like a metronome, watched the footage of his exam 3 times that night. She signed the approval form. She did not sleep well. When Izuku walked out of the exam building, license in hand, Jiro was waiting by the gate. She had passed her own exam 2 hours earlier. Her heartbeat fuzz had evolved during weeks of intensive training into a focused sonic lance that could shatter concrete and disable electronics at range. She had passed on her own, completely. "You didn't need me for that," he told her. "I know," she said. "Good. I like being with someone who can handle themselves." She rolled her eyes. High praise from the guy who talks to the ground. The ground listens better than most people. "What does the ground say about me?" "That you're the most interesting vibration it's ever felt." He said it with an absolutely straight face. She turned red. He grinned. They walked to the train station together, licensed heroes, side by side. "I am the greatest earthbender in the world," he said as they waited on the platform, "and the most insufferable. That's part of the package." She leaned against his shoulder. Isamis, her jacks tapped against his arm in a rhythm. He tapped his foot against the concrete platform in response. Same rhythm. Mirrored. Some things did not change no matter how many licenses you earned or how many exams you passed. The frequency between them was always the same. The Shihasaikai mission came in the fall. Mirio Togata, third-year student, one of UA's Big Three, a man whose smile was so aggressively optimistic it gave Izuku a headache, brought the information to Aizawa, an underground organization running quirk-destroying drugs, a child being used as the source material, a boss named Kai Chisaki who called himself Overhaul and wore a plague mask like it was a fashion statement. Aizawa assembled the strike team. Izuku was on it without discussion. There was no version of an underground raid that did not include the person who could feel the entire compound through the stone. The tunnel entrance was in a warehouse district on the western edge of the city. A freight elevator that went down 4 levels into a subterranean compound built into the bedrock. Izuku stepped off the elevator. His bare feet touched the stone floor of the tunnel, and the entire compound opened up in his mind like a blueprint. 43 people in the structure, he said. Aizawa was beside him, capture weapon coiled. Mirio on the other side, vibrating with energy. Fat Gum, Kirishima, Tamaki, and several other pros filled the corridor behind them. 8 of them are children. 2 are locked in the lowest level. 1 has an erratic heartbeat, weak, irregular, the kind of rhythm you hear in someone whose body is failing them. The other one is steadier but terrified. He paused, tilted his head, rid deeper. The rest of the people are concentrated in the central chamber and the east wing, armed, waiting. Overhaul is in the lowest level with the 2 children. He knows we're here. Aizawa stared at him. How many seconds did that take you? 4. The raid kicked off hard and fast. The Hasaikai soldiers were organized. They had quirk users in every corridor, wall-phasing scouts, projectile launchers, a man whose body could fuse with the stone floor to create moving barriers. The tunnels were designed to funnel attackers into kill zones. Izuku broke the design in 30 seconds. He pressed his palms to the tunnel wall and felt the compound's structure, every load-bearing point, every joint, every weakness. Then he pulled. The walls of the first corridor twisted inward, compressing the space by 3 feet on each side. The Hasaikai soldiers positioned in ambush found their cover disappearing as the stone they hid behind bent toward the center of the hallway and pinned them in place. Aizawa's capture weapon did the rest. Mirio phased through walls and took corridors at a dead run. Fat Gum absorbed everything thrown at him and kept moving. Kirishima hardened and served as a battering ram. The team pressed forward. Izuku moved ahead of all of them. He walked through the compound's tunnels with his hands behind his back, feeling every enemy's position before they knew he was coming. When a wall phaser tried to ambush from the left, Izuku collapsed the wall around the man before he fully emerged. When a projectile launcher fired down a corridor, Izuku raised a slab of tunnel floor as a shield, and then pushed the slab forward, sweeping the shooter off his feet and pinning him against the far wall. He was pulling the compound apart around the enemies without letting it fall on his allies. The tunnels groaned. The structure shifted. He was taking the building apart piece by piece and reassembling it into a maze that only his team could navigate. They reached the central chamber. Overhaul's lieutenants were waiting. Nemoto, Sakaki, a man with a barrier, a quirk, and two others whose abilities Izuku cataloged through the stone before the door opened. The fight was brief and absolute. Izuku raised the central chamber's floor in sections, creating elevated platforms that his team fought from, while the enemy's ground-level positions were undermined by sinking stone. Kirishima took the barrier user head-on. Mirio phased through Sakaki's defenses. Izuku handled Nemoto, the confessor whose quirk forced people to tell the truth. "Tell me what you really think of your boss," Nemoto demanded, his quirk activating. Izuku felt the compulsion, a tug in his throat, the words trying to form. "He's a coward," Izuku said, "not because the quirk forced him, because it was true and his heartbeat never lied anyway. He hurts children because he's too weak to build anything without breaking someone else first." Nemoto blinked. The quirk worked on deception, on forcing out truths people were hiding. It had no purchase on a person who already said exactly what he thought. Izuku stomped and the floor swallowed Nemoto to his chest. The lowest level. The final corridor. Chisaki was waiting. He stood in a sterile white room that stank of antiseptic and something worse. Something that smelled like blood and bleach and the slow dying of something innocent. Behind him, in a bed that was too small and too cold, a little girl with white hair and a single red horn sat with her knees pulled to her chest. Eri, the source of his quirk-destroying bullets. The child he had been taking apart and putting back together like a machine. Chisaki wore his plague mask. His golden eyes were steady above it. His gloved hands were at his sides. "You must be the blind one," Chisaki said. His voice was smooth and even, the voice of a man who had convinced himself that everything he did was medicine. "I've read about you. Impressive for an anomaly." Izuku stood in the doorway, barefoot. The stone floor of the room was cold and hard and spoke to him with the clarity of a scream. He could feel Eri's heartbeat, thin, erratic, the rhythm of a body that had been broken and rebuilt too many times. He could feel the flutter of her breaths, the trembling of her tiny frame. "You borrow the earth," Izuku said. His voice was level. "You touch it, and you take it apart and put it back in a shape that serves you. You think that makes you like me?" Chisaki's eyes narrowed above his mask. "I am the earth," Izuku said. "There's a difference." Chisaki pulled off one glove, his bare hand pressed against the wall. The stone exploded outward, restructured in a heartbeat into a wave of spikes aimed at Izuku's chest. Izuku did not dodge. He raised his right hand and the spikes stopped. Mid-air. The stone resisted Chisaki's command because the stone was already listening to someone else. The spikes trembled between two masters for half a second and then reversed, crumbling into dust that settled on the floor. Chisaki's eyes went wide. He pressed both hands to the floor. The entire room deconstructed and reconstructed around Izuku. Walls reforming into blades, the floor folding into a cage, the ceiling dropping in sections. Izuku stomped. The room obeyed him. Every piece of restructured stone halted. The blades froze, the cage opened, the ceiling sections retreated. The room reformed around Izuku's will, not Chisaki's. The stone choosing its master the way a dog chooses its owner. By instinct, by connection, by the deep recognition of who had been speaking its language since he was 4 years old in a park with his palms in the dirt. Chisaki's restructuring quirk fought for control. The walls shuddered. The floor rippled. It was a tug-of-war between a man who could take things apart and a boy who was the thing itself. Izuku won. The room settled. The stone was his. Chisaki staggered backward. His face behind the mask was white. He spun and ran up. Through the ceiling, he shattered with a touch, through the floors above, tearing the compound apart as he fled toward the surface. Izuku looked at Eri. She was staring at him. Her red eyes were huge. Her heartbeat was a hummingbird's. Too fast, too scared, too small. "I'll be right back," he said. He went up. The fight erupted onto the street above the warehouse district. Chisaki had fused with Nemoto, dragged the man's body into his own through deconstruction and reconstruction, creating a massive form of stone and flesh, 15 feet tall, arms like pillars, a monster of merged bodies and stolen matter. He tore the road apart. Cars flew. Pavement shattered into fragments that he restructured into projectiles and launched at anything that moved. Izuku stood in the street, barefoot on the broken asphalt, hands behind his back. "Are you done?" he said. He stomped. The ground beneath the overhaul Nemoto fusion turned molten, targeted, contained, a pool of orange-white magma that opened exactly beneath the creature's massive feet. The pavement bubbled. The stone liquefied. Chisaki sank. He screamed. The monstrous form tried to deconstruct the lava, tried to take it apart and put it back together. You cannot deconstruct what is already in its most chaotic state. Lava is stone that has already been destroyed. There was nothing left to take apart. Chisaki sank to his waist before the desperation hit. He separated from Nemoto, splitting the fusion with a wet, tearing sound, and launched himself sideways with a frantic restructuring of the road surface. He landed 10 meters away, human-sized again, gasping, his legs burned, his mask cracked. Izuku was already there. One hand, he used his hand this time, which meant something, pressed flat against the road beside Chisaki's face. "The little girl in your basement," Izuku said. His voice was even. "The one with the erratic heartbeat. You did that." Chisaki opened his mouth. Izuku's palm hit the road. Stone encased the villain from the neck down. It compressed. The sound of cracking ribs echoed through the empty street. Chisaki screamed. Then he stopped screaming because the stone around his chest would not let his lungs expand enough to produce sound. "They'll take you to prison," Izuku said, standing up. He brushed the dust from his palm. "I'm personally disappointed. I have to leave it at that." The police arrived. The pros secured the perimeter. Medics poured into the tunnels. Eri was brought out on a stretcher. She was alive. Her heartbeat was still weak, still scared, still wrong in ways that no child's heartbeat should be wrong. But it was beating. The ambulance parked at the curb. The medics loaded Eri. Izuku crouched beside the stretcher before they closed the doors. He pressed his hand to the ambulance floor, metal, but connected to the road beneath it through the suspension and the tires and the ground itself. He sent a pulse through the floor, slow, steady, like a heartbeat, a rhythm, consistent, safe. Eri looked up at him. Her eyes were still too big, still too scared, but something in them shifted. "You're safe," he said. "The ground says so. It's never wrong." She did not smile, but she did not flinch from him either. The ambulance doors closed. The vehicle pulled away. Izuku stood on the curb and felt its vibrations fade into the distance. Jiro found him on the UA roof that night. Same spot, same edge, same bare feet hanging over nothing. She sat beside him. "Close. The girl," she said. "Eri, is she going to be okay?" "Recovery girl and Aizawa are handling it. Her heartbeat is stabilizing." Jiro was quiet for a moment. Her jacks hung still. "And you? What about me?" "You're doing the thing where you pretend you're fine so I don't worry. I am fine. Your foot hasn't stopped tapping since you sat down. You tap when you're processing something you don't know how to say." He stopped tapping. She was right. He hated when she was right about things he did not notice himself. "A man took a child apart," he said. Over and over, for years. He built an empire on her pain and called it medicine. His jaw tightened. And I walked in and stopped him, and now he's in a cell and she's in a hospital bed, and the system will grind through its process and eventually someone will stamp a form and call it justice. But it doesn't feel like enough. She leaned against his shoulder. "It never does. You stopped it. That's what matters." "Stick with me, Kyoka," he said. "I need someone who tells me when enough is enough, because I'm not good at finding that line on my own." She wrapped her hand around his. "I'm not going anywhere." They sat on the roof until the city went quiet and the stars burned in a sky Izuku could not see, and Jiro watched for both of them. The next year was a slow burn. The hero world was changing. The League of Villains had gone underground. Literally. After Kamino, after the training camp, after Overhaul's fall, the remaining villains had consolidated. Shigaraki was rebuilding. Redestro and the Meta Liberation Army were merging with the League's remnants. Something massive was forming in the shadows, something that tasted like an army and smelled like a war. Izuku felt it, not through intelligence briefings or news reports, through the earth itself. The ground had been restless for months, micro tremors that did not register on any seismograph but pulsed through Izuku's feet like a warning. Underground construction, tunnel networks being carved in places where no tunnels should exist. The slow, deliberate movement of thousands of people repositioning beneath the surface of the country. He told Aizawa, "Something is building underground," he said. "I can feel tunnel construction across 6 prefectures. Whoever is digging knows where the fault lines are and is building along them." Aizawa's jaw tightened. He passed the information up the chain. The HPSC investigated. They found nothing. Because the tunnels were too deep and too well hidden for conventional detection, but they were not too deep for Izuku. He mapped them. Over weeks, pressing his feet to the ground in different cities, different forests, different mountain ranges. Each session added pieces to a puzzle that grew more terrifying the more complete it became. A network. An underground nation. The Paranormal Liberation Front. The war came on a spring morning so ordinary that Izuku would later remember it for how aggressively normal it had been. Clear sky, birdsong, the hum of the city waking up. Jiro had made coffee and complained about a chord progression she could not get right. He had told her the progression was in B-flat, which was her frustration key, and she had thrown a guitar pick at his head. Then every phone in the building screamed emergency mobilization. All heroes. All agencies. Simultaneous attacks across 6 cities. The Paranormal Liberation Front had launched. Izuku was on his feet before the alert finished sounding. His bare toes pressed into the dorm floor and the city opened to him. Fires in the east, structural collapses in the north, the deep rumble of explosions propagating through the bedrock in every direction. And underground, the tunnel network he had mapped, alive now, filled with thousands of moving bodies pouring out of exits he had flagged months ago. "They're using the tunnels," he said into his communicator. "Every exit point I mapped, they're all active." Aizawa's voice came back. "We're deploying to the northern front. You're with the Hero Coalition. Sector 7. Copy." He turned to Jiro. She was already in her hero costume. Earphone jacks extended. Eyes sharp. "Be careful," she said. "Not a request, an instruction. Always am. You literally melted a city block last semester. And I was very careful about which block." She didn't laugh. Her heartbeat was doing the thing it did when she was scared, but refusing to show it. Elevated but rigid, held in place by sheer force of will. He crossed the room. He put his hands on her face. Palms against her jaw, thumbs on her cheeks. The way he did when he needed to read the truth of her. "I will come back," he said. She covered his hands with hers. "You better." He left. The Battle of Sector 7 was a nightmare by any standard. A commercial district transformed into a war zone in under an hour. PLF soldiers poured from tunnel exits and building basements in waves, hundreds, then thousands, armed with weapons and quirks and the fanatical energy of a liberation movement that had been building pressure for years. Izuku operated in the center of the district. He was the anchor, the immovable point around which the hero defense pivoted. Pro-heroes fought on either side of him, pushing back waves of PLF soldiers, but the line held because the ground held, and the ground held because Izuku held it. He raised barricades of stone across every street. He ripped metal from building facades and wove it into barriers that corralled the PLF advance into kill zones where heroes waited. He opened sinkholes beneath enemy formations and sealed them shut before the soldiers could climb out. He turned the streets into a living maze that shifted around the PLF forces, funneling them, separating them, boxing them in. The scale was staggering. He was bending the earth across 6 city blocks simultaneously, walls rising, streets collapsing, metal bending, stone shifting, and he did it with his feet planted in the middle of an intersection. His hands behind his back, his blind eyes aimed at a sky he could not see while the city tore itself apart around him. "I am the greatest earthbender in the world," he said to nobody in particular. His voice carried across the ruined intersection. A squad of PLF soldiers who had been trying to breach his barricade heard him and stopped advancing. They looked at the stone walls that had materialized around them, at the street that had opened beneath their comrades. at the blind teenager standing in the center of the apocalypse with his hands clasped behind his back. Two of them dropped their weapons and sat down. The third ran. The ground swallowed him to his waist. Then, in the middle of the largest engagement of the war, while Izuku was simultaneously maintaining barricades across 6 blocks and coordinating hero movements through seismic pulses, her heartbeat changed. He was 3 kilometers from the evacuation facility. 3 kilometers of city, of burning buildings and crumbling streets, and the chaos of a war in full swing. Her heartbeat was at the edge of his range. Faint, a signal he maintained the way a radio operator maintains a frequency, constant and unconscious. It went wrong in 2 seconds. The kick drum stuttered. Then it raced. Then it muffled. Not fading but compressed as if something had closed around her. Izuku stopped. His barricades held. The walls held. The metal held. Everything he had built in the last hour maintained itself through the sheer inertia of the stone. But Izuku was no longer fighting. He was listening. Her heartbeat was moving. East. Fast. And it was accompanied by 4 others. Aggressive, purposeful heartbeats. Soldiers. They had her. The PLF had hit the evacuation facility. While Izuku was the center of the hero defense, a separate unit had bypassed the front lines through an unmapped tunnel branch and hit the place where the non-combat students were sheltered. They had taken Jiro. They knew. They had studied him. They knew that the blind boy who could melt the earth had one consistent point of focus, one heartbeat he tracked above all others, one person whose frequency made his world clearer. They had taken her not to hurt her, although they would, but to break his compass, to make him choose between the battle and the person. A PLF soldier, emboldened by the momentary stillness of the barefoot figure in the intersection, charged him. Izuku did not move. The ground moved. A slab of compressed bedrock launched the soldier sideways with enough force to bury him in the wall of a convenience store. The impact left a crater in the brickwork shaped like a man. Izuku stood in the intersection, bare feet on the road, hands at his sides. He followed the thread of her heartbeat through the stone. Faint, moving east, underground. They were taking her into the tunnel network, his tunnel network, the one he had mapped, the one he knew better than anyone alive. He went quiet. Everyone near him felt it. The change, the shift from combatant to something else. The pro-heroes fighting alongside him, Fat Gum, Tamaki, 2 sidekicks from a local agency, all looked at him and all felt the same thing. The temperature of the air around him dropping, the vibrations in the ground changing frequency, the sense that the earth itself had just taken a breath and was holding it. Midoriya? Fat Gum said. His voice was careful. What's happening? Keep the line, Izuku said. His voice was flat. I need to go. Go where? East. He turned. He pressed his foot into the road. The asphalt split in a straight line heading east, a fissure, 2 feet wide, running from his position toward the tunnel entrance 4 blocks away. Not a crack. A path. A trench he carved through the city with the patience of a scalpel and the fury of a fault line. He walked the trench. The PLF soldiers still on the surface saw him go. Some tried to intercept. One stepped into his path and the ground opened beneath him like a trapdoor. Another fired a quirk blast at his back and the trench walls rose to absorb it. A third, a large man with a strength-enhancing ability, charged him head-on. Izuku raised one hand without turning around. A column of stone erupted from the trench wall and hit the man in the chest. He flew backward through a plate glass window and did not get up. Izuku reached the tunnel entrance. A service door in the basement of an office building, ripped open by the PLF's advance team. He walked through the door and down the stairs, bare feet hitting the stone floor of the tunnel network. His full map bloomed. Every tunnel, every branch, every heartbeat within a kilometer. The PLF soldiers who had taken Jiro were 300 meters ahead, moving fast through a main artery that ran east toward the coast. There were others in the tunnels, soldiers left behind as security. Tripwires, not explosive but seismic, designed to sense footsteps and alert the forward team. Izuku felt every one of them. He stepped over the tripwires. The stones swallowed their sensors as he passed, silencing them. The security soldiers heard nothing. They saw nothing. They felt nothing, until the tunnel walls closed around them. One by one, silent, inescapable. The first soldier was standing at a junction, a radio in his hand. The wall behind him extended 2 inches and wrapped around his torso. He opened his mouth to scream, and the stone covered it. He was pinned, silenced, breathing through his nose in the grip of the mountain. The second soldier was crouched in an alcove with a weapon. The floor beneath him softened, and he sank to his waist before the stone hardened again. His weapon clattered to the ground. He strained against the rock, and the rock did not care. The third soldier heard the second one go down and ran. He made it 6 feet. The tunnel ceiling descended, just enough, and pressed him flat against the floor. Izuku walked through the tunnel. He did not run. He did not need to. The soldiers between him and Jiro were obstacles. The earth removed obstacles, 12 soldiers, 300 meters, 2 minutes. He reached the chamber. Stone walls, low ceiling, a room carved from the bedrock, 20 feet square, lit by a single portable light, 4 PLF soldiers standing at the corners, and in the center, on the stone floor, Jiro. She was alive. Her arms were bound behind her back. Her jacks had been cut, not severed completely, but damaged, shortened, bleeding at the tips. There was a bruise on her left cheekbone. Her hair was matted with dust and sweat. Her hero costume was torn at the shoulder. Her heartbeat was erratic, fast, furious, scared, but alive. Izuku walked through the wall. The stone parted for him the way water parts for a hand. He stepped through solid rock and stood in the chamber, dust falling from his shoulders, his milky green eyes aimed at nothing and everything. The 4 soldiers spun, weapons raised, quirks activated. Izuku crouched in front of Jiro, both hands on her face, palms against her jaw, thumbs on her cheeks, reading her pulse, her temperature. The damage, alive. Erratic, in pain, alive. "I've got you," he said. Her eyes, red-rimmed and burning with a fury that had nothing to do with crying, found his cloudy ones. "Took you long enough," she said. His hands were shaking, the same hands that moved mountains and bent metal and held the earth together through an entire war, shaking against the sides of her face. "Who did this?" he said. It was not a question. One of the soldiers heard him say it. The man turned and ran for the tunnel entrance. He made it 6 feet before the floor opened and swallowed him to the waist. The stone sealed around his legs. He screamed. Izuku did not look up from Jiro. "Don't move," he told the remaining soldiers. His voice was the quietest it had ever been, quieter than the earth before an earthquake. "If any of you take a step, I will bury you so deep your bones will become fossils." Nobody moved. "Can you walk?" he asked Jiro. "Yeah." "Good. Hold my hand." She held his hand. He pulled her to her feet. She swayed, and he caught her, his arm around her waist, his body between her and every soldier in the room. He walked her out, through the tunnel, through the stone corridor, past 12 entombed PLF soldiers who stared at them with eyes the size of plates, past the collapsed sensors, past the torn-open service door, up the stairs, into the street. The daylight hit them, and Jiro's grip on his hand tightened. She was holding his hand so hard his knuckles were white, and he did not care. He did not care about the war or the barricades or the PLF or the burning city. He cared about the heartbeat pressed against his side, the kick drum finding its rhythm, the one frequency in the world that made his universe make sense. They reached the medic station 2 blocks north. He delivered her to a trauma team. She sat on a stretcher and they started working on her jacks. She looked at him. "Go," she said. "I don't want to." "I know. Go anyway. They need you." He stood over her for 3 seconds. His hands had stopped shaking. His jaw was locked. His face was a thing that Jiro had never seen before, and that the PLF soldiers in his path would remember for the rest of their lives. He pressed his palm to her forehead. Brief, warm, a goodbye that was also a promise. Then he turned back toward the war, and his face was a different thing entirely. The final engagement of the Paranormal Liberation War lasted 3 more hours. Izuku returned to the front line, and the PLF wished he had not. The barricades he had built before were defensive. What he built now was offensive. Walls of stone that advanced through the streets like a slow-moving avalanche, sweeping PLF soldiers ahead of them. Metal ripped from every building in the district and woven into nets that descended on enemy formations. The ground itself, rising and falling in waves that knocked hundreds of fighters off their feet. He moved through the city like a force that had decided it was done being patient. When it was over, when the PLF's main force was broken and the tunnel network collapsed and the Liberation Army scattered into the kind of disorganized retreat that takes months to recover from, the Hero Coalition held the field. But the war was not over, because the thing that had started it, the mind behind it, was still alive, all for one. The truth came out in pieces. Intelligence recovered from PLF command posts, interrogations of captured lieutenants, data from Shigaraki's personal communications, and a single damning file found on a server in the deepest level of the PLF's underground headquarters, a file that mapped Izuku Midoriya's abilities, his daily schedule, his training patterns, and the name of every person he cared about. Jiro's name was circled. Izuku read the file in Braille because someone on the intelligence team had the good sense to convert it, and he was quiet for a long time after. The file led to the bigger picture. All for One, the original, ancient villain, had been pulling every string since before the League of Villains first attacked USJ. The PLF, the attacks, the training camp, the kidnapping. All of it. He had studied Izuku the way a general studies a weapon he wants to neutralize. He had probed for weaknesses. He had found one. Not a weakness in Izuku's abilities, but a weakness in his focus. A place where his compass locked. He had made a mistake. Because the probing had not revealed a vulnerability. It had created a debt. And debts were the one thing Izuku Midoriya never left unpaid. The final battle came 6 weeks later. All for One descended on Camino Ward at dusk. He came from nowhere, or rather from everywhere, his network of stolen quirks allowing him to manipulate distance and space in ways that conventional defense could not track. One moment the street was empty. The next, he was there. Tall, armored, ancient. A man wearing the face of a century's worth of theft, standing in the middle of a city block with the posture of someone who owned the air. The evacuation was already underway. Heroes had been positioning for this since the intelligence came in. Perimeter teams pushed civilians out. Combat teams moved in. Izuku was at the center. He stood in the rubble of a street that had been cleared by advanced teams. Barefoot, hands at his sides. The broken asphalt spoke to him, fractured but solid beneath the surface. Good bedrock, deep soil, metal infrastructure running through every building like veins. All for One looked at him. The villain's face was scarred, eyeless, or perhaps he had eyes hidden behind the mass of ruined tissue. It did not matter. Izuku could not see him anyway. The blind boy, All for One, said. His voice was immense. It filled the street the way thunder fills a valley, not through volume, but through presence. You are everything they hoped you would be, and everything that must be ended. You had her tortured, Izuku said. All for One tilted his head. A pressure test. To measure your response time, your emotional vulnerability, your willingness to abandon strategic positions for personal attachments. He paused. You passed, incidentally. I know. Izuku's foot came down. The city block shook. Not an earthquake, a statement. The ground beneath every building in a 200-meter radius shuddered, and in that shudder, Izuku read the terrain the way a general reads a battlefield. Every foundation, every pillar, every beam of steel and vein of rebar. His All for One raised one hand. The air in front of it rippled with force. A combination of stolen quirks stacked into a single output that hit the street like a bomb. The road cratered. Debris flew. The shockwave hit Izuku and he slid backward 3 feet, his bare feet carving grooves in the asphalt. He was still standing. He stomped. A wall of bedrock erupted from the road, 10 feet thick, 15 feet tall. The next blast hit it. The wall cracked, but held for 2 seconds, and in those 2 seconds, Izuku was moving. He drove his heel into the ground to his left, and a column of stone shot from the earth at a 45-degree angle, aimed at All for One's torso. The villain caught it, one hand. He wrapped his enhanced fingers around the stone pillar and crushed it to powder. Impressive, All for One said. But insufficient. He raised both hands. Twin blasts. One of raw force, one of something that distorted the air like heat haze. They converged on Izuku's position from 2 angles. Izuku dropped to one knee and pressed both palms to the road. The street rose around him in a dome, not a wall, but a sphere of compressed stone that sealed him inside. Both blasts hit the sphere simultaneously. The stone cracked. Fragments broke inward. K. But the sphere held for the 1 second Izuku needed to redirect the kinetic energy through the dome's foundation and into the ground beneath All for One's feet. The street buckled upward. All for One stumbled. Half a step, a fraction of balance lost. Izuku exploded from the dome and launched a wave of stone that crashed into the villain's midsection. All for One took the hit. His body was reinforced by a dozen stolen strength and durability quirks. The stone wave staggered him, but did not drop him. He fired back. A concentrated blast aimed at Izuku's head. Izuku bent sideways, not dodging with speed, but shifting the ground beneath his own feet to tilt him out of the blast's path. The energy seared past his left ear. He could feel the heat of it. Close. Too close. All for One pressed the advantage. He closed the distance with a burst of stolen speed, appearing inside Izuku's range in a blink, one hand extended, his stealing quirk activated. Izuku felt it, a reaching, grasping thing, an invisible hand trying to grab something from inside him. It searched, it probed, it found nothing, because earthbending was not a quirk. It had no signal, no frequency, no genetic marker. It was not stored in his cells or encoded in his DNA. It was in his bones and his feet and the part of him that the planet itself had claimed when he was 4 years old with his palms in the dirt. All for One's hand closed on empty air. Izuku smiled. The first real smile since Jiro was taken. "Sorry," he said. "Nothing to steal. I built this myself." He stomped. The fight escalated beyond anything the hero world had ever witnessed. All for One unleashed everything. Dozens of stolen quirks firing in sequence and in combination. Energy blasts, gravitational shifts, air cannons, physical enhancements that turned his body into a battering ram. He was a Swiss Army knife of accumulated power. A century of theft weaponized into a single entity, Izuku met every attack with the earth. Walls of stone that rose and fell like breathing. Metal torn from buildings and woven into barriers. The street itself rippling and heaving, becoming an extension of Izuku's body. Every crack and fault line, a nerve ending that fed him information. All for One hit him. Real hits. Blasts that punched through stone walls and caught Izuku's earth armor on the other side. A gravitational pulse that lifted him off the ground for a terrifying half-second before he launched a pebble downward and used the kinetic reaction to slam himself back to the surface. A physical strike, All for One's enhanced fist, that caught Izuku's stone-armored shoulder and spun him sideways, cracking the armor and the bone beneath it. Izuku stumbled. His left arm went numb. Pain shot through his shoulder and down his spine. He stomped through it. A pillar of bedrock caught All for One in the hip and drove him backward. Izuku followed it with a wave of metal, rebar torn from the building to his right, twisted into a spear launched at the villain's chest. All for One swatted it aside with a force blast. They were destroying the city block. Every exchange carved new craters, collapsed new walls, turned another section of street into rubble. The air was thick with dust and heat. Izuku drove All for One backward. 1 block. Two blocks. Each engagement bleeding the villain's position, forcing him to retreat through terrain that Izuku had already mapped and claimed. All for One's heartbeat was changing. Izuku read it through the soles of his bleeding feet. The rhythm was accelerating, the force behind each beat becoming irregular. The villain was pushing his accumulated quirks harder, burning through stolen energy faster than he could regenerate. "You cannot kill me," All for One said. He unleashed a blast that collapsed a 6-story building beside them. The structure groaned and fell inward, tons of concrete and steel crashing into the street. Izuku raised both hands and the falling debris stopped. He held the building's corpse in midair. Thousands of tons of material suspended by earthbending and metalbending working in concert, and then dropped it. On All for One, the villain blasted through the rubble. He emerged covered in dust and blood. His armor cracked, his movements slower. "I have survived everything," All for One finished. "You haven't survived me," Izuku said. He went into a deep horse stance. Both palms hit the road. The ground beneath All for One turned white hot. A contained circle, 3 meters wide, targeted with the kind of focus that came from a decade of training and a lifetime of connection to the planet itself. The asphalt bubbled, the concrete liquefied. A churning pool of boiling magma opened beneath the villain's feet like a drain. All for One reacted. Multiple quirks fired simultaneously. A blast aimed downward to launch himself upward, a strength enhancement to tear free of the lava's edge, a wind quirk to gain altitude. He cleared the magma. He was 10 meters up. Airborne, Izuku was already bending the metal framework of the surrounding buildings. 3 massive steel girders, each one 40 feet long and as thick as a man's torso, ripped from the structures on either side of the street and shot toward All for One's airborne body. The first one wrapped around his legs. The villain tore through it. The second caught his arms. He shattered it with a force blast. The third one, Izuku drove it with everything he had, wrapped around All for One's torso and compressed. It held for 2 seconds. 2 seconds was all Izuku needed. He read All for One's descent trajectory through the vibrations of the falling debris. The villain was coming down, and beneath his landing point, Izuku had been waiting. A column of solid bedrock, ancient stone, compressed over geological ages, harder than anything human engineering could produce, erupted from the ground directly beneath All for One's trajectory. It hit him from below with the force of a tectonic event. The impact was a sound that broke windows for 3 blocks. All for One's body folded around the column, his stolen quirks failing to absorb the force because the force was not kinetic. It was geological. The earth itself rejecting him, he crashed into a building. The building crumbled. He emerged from the rubble. He was still standing, but he was bleeding from his mouth, from his nose, from cracks in his armor that had not been there before. For a monster who had not bled in decades, this was a revelation. Impressive, All for One said. His voice was quieter, strained, truly impressive. I'm not done, Izuku said. The lava vortex, still churning in the crater behind them, widened. The ground trembled. Heat shimmered across the street. You wanted to understand what I am, Izuku said. He walked toward All for One, each step reading the ground, each step sending information back. I'm blind. Been blind since the day I was born. I have never seen a single thing in this world. Not a sunrise, not a face, not a hero. Not you. He stopped. But I can feel everything. And what I feel right now is that you are standing on borrowed time, and the earth is done lending. All for One screamed and unleashed everything. Every stolen quirk, simultaneously. The blast was a pillar of pure accumulated force, the output of a century's worth of theft concentrated into a single strike aimed at the blind teenager standing 8 meters away. The energy column was 3 meters wide, and it vaporized the air in its path, turning the street between them into a trench of superheated gas. Izuku split his stance. A wall of earth rose, 3 meters thick. Layers of bedrock, compressed soil, reinforced with rebar pulled from the surrounding foundations. The blast hit it. The wall cracked. The blast pushed through. Izuku held it. His feet drove into the ground, his arms locked, his teeth clenched. The wall was fracturing, the stones splintering under the force, and he held it together through sheer will, replacing every broken layer with a new one. Pulling stone from the earth faster than the blast could destroy it. The blast lasted 4 seconds. It felt like 4 years. When it ended, Izuku pushed the wall forward. It collapsed toward All for One. A slow avalanche of compressed stone, and beneath it, the ground was already moving, the lava already reaching, the earth already closing. All for One tried to move. He was slower now. The accumulated damage, the energy expenditure, the bleeding, it was adding up. He stepped left, and the ground rose to block him. He stepped right, and the lava pool expanded in that direction. He tried to jump, and a steel girder caught his ankle and pulled him back down. The lava caught his legs. He screamed. A real scream full of genuine agony, the kind of pain that transcended a century of accumulated power and reminded the ancient villain that he was, underneath everything, still made of flesh. He dragged himself free. His legs were a ruin. Burned through, regenerating slowly, too slowly. He collapsed. His stolen quirks flickered and surged as his body tried to repair the damage. Izuku walked to him. He crouched beside the fallen villain. You took something from me, Izuku said. His voice was quiet. You built an organization to take things from people. You've been stealing for a century. He pressed his palm to the road beside All for One's face. The earth is a patient thing. It holds everything eventually. He stood. I'll let the courts decide if you live, but I want you to know something. He stomped. The ground encased All for One from the neck down, compressed, immovable. Stone so dense it would take industrial drilling equipment a week to breach. The next time anyone touches Kyokujiro, Izuku said, there won't be a court. There will just be a lava field. All for One's heartbeat answered. It was the first real fear the ancient villain had felt in longer than most civilizations had existed. Izuku straightened. He turned away from the entombed villain and pressed his feet into the broken road. He had 3 seconds of relief. Then, The ground screamed, not literally, but through Izuku's feet, the earth communicated something that registered as a scream, a massive, cascading disruption traveling through the bedrock from the north side of the city. Something was happening, something that felt like every atom in a square mile was coming apart. Shigaraki. While Izuku had been fighting all for one, which had been the plan, the delay, the entire point, the real weapon had been activated. Shigaraki's body, rebuilt from the inside out over the past year, reprogrammed to serve as all for one's vessel, had broken free from the pro-heroes holding him on the northern front. All for one's consciousness surged across whatever connection existed between the ancient villain and his successor. The body pinned in stone on the street was a puppet, expendable. The real monster was Shigaraki, now fully awakened, the young man's soul supplanted by the will of his master. The decay field hit the northern district like a plague. Everything within 50 meters of Shigaraki was dissolving. Buildings, streets, the air itself seemed to gray and crumble. A passive field, not activated, just existing. The space around him was a dead zone that expanded with every step he took. Heroes fled. Endeavor, fighting on the northern front, retreated for the first time in his career. Mirko, who feared nothing, pulled back. Best Genist wrapped his fiber in layers and still lost 3 feet of material in the time it took to turn around. The decay field moved south, toward the city center, toward everything. Izuku felt it through the ground, felt the stone disintegrating, felt the road surface crumbling, felt the deep bedrock, the ancient 400-million-year-old foundation of the island, shaking as the decay field tried to unmake it. He turned toward the north, and he walked, because the earth does not decay. Stone is already dead. It has been dead for millions of years. It is compressed time, compressed pressure, the memory of mountains and oceans and ages beyond counting. You cannot kill what was never alive. You cannot decay what has already endured everything. And lava. Lava is stone that has already been destroyed. It is chaos in liquid form. It is the end of the process that decay begins. There is nothing left for decay to take. Izuku walked toward the decay field. The road beneath his feet crumbled. He stepped through it. The bedrock held. He drove his connection deeper, past the crumbling surface layer, past the infrastructure, past the soil, into the ancient stone beneath the city like a skeleton beneath skin. The decay field reached for him. The air grayed. His clothes started to dissolve at the edges, his shirt fraying, his pants losing threads, but his skin held, his bones held. The earth in him, the part of him that had been connected to the planet since he was 4 years old, rejected the decay the way water rejects oil. He walked into the field. Shigaraki stood at its center, or rather, all for one stood inside Shigaraki's body. The young man was unrecognizable, taller, leaner, his white hair longer, his red eyes glowing with a light that was not his own. The hands that had once scratched at his neck in anxiety were still now, confident, possessed. "It's over," Izuku said. "You lost. He lost. Come back if there's anything left of you in there." Shigaraki, all for one's voice through Shigaraki's mouth, laughed. The sound was wrong, layered, an old voice wearing a young throat. "There is nothing left to save," all for one said through his vessel. "I am complete. Then you're finished." Izuku drove both heels into the bedrock. The heat came from below. Deep. Ancient. Channeled from a thermal vent 2 kilometers down through the fault lines that Izuku had been reading since the moment he set foot in this city. He had felt the geothermal activity beneath Kamino from the first pulse of the battle. He had been warming the earth under this entire district for the past hour, a slow, patient build, the way Granite had taught him. The earth was patient. It endured. And when it was ready, it moved. The lava erupted, not from a crack, from everywhere. The ground beneath Shigaraki split along a dozen fault lines and magma surged upward through every one, orange and white and blinding, a rising tide of molten stone that turned the street into a river of fire. Shigaraki's decay field met the lava and found no purchase. The decay dissolved what it touched, but the lava was already in the process of dissolution. It was already everything decay did, expressed as heat and pressure and geological fury. The two forces met and canceled each other. The decay field flickered, stuttered. The gray at its edges receded. Shigaraki recoiled. For the first time, the puppet's face showed something that might have been surprise. He tried to leap, to use the enhanced body All For One had built to clear the lava field. Izuku stomped, and a shockwave of compressed earth, a directed earthquake pulse, a seismic hammer aimed at a single point, hit Shigaraki mid-leap and knocked him sideways. He landed at the lava's edge. The molten stone reached for his feet. The decay field surged. Shigaraki pushed it outward, a desperate expansion, trying to decay the lava before it reached him. The lava steamed. The stone at its edges grayed and crumbled, but beneath the crumbling surface, more lava rose. Hotter. Denser. Izuku was feeding it from below faster than the decay could unmake it. Shigaraki screamed. Two voices, layered. All For One's commanding baritone, and beneath it, buried, suffocated, barely audible, something younger. Something that cracked. Something that sounded like a boy named Tenko who'd once wanted to be a hero before the hands covered his face. "I'm sorry," Izuku said, quietly, just for him. He cupped his hands together. The lava closed. It rose from every direction. A dome of molten stone, white-hot and churning, sealing around Shigaraki's position like the closing of an eye. The decay field raged inside it, dissolving and reforming and dissolving again in an endless cycle that the lava always won because the lava always had more to give. The dome hardened. The orange faded to red. The red faded to black. The black cooled. The surface crystallized into obsidian, smooth, reflective, absolute. Inside the dome, the decay field collapsed. There was nothing left to decay. The obsidian sealed everything. The field, the vessel, the ancient will inside it. In a tomb of glass and stone, the air cleared. The graying stopped. The city went still. Izuku stood in the middle of the destruction. Bare feet on the ancient bedrock, the only surface that had survived the decay field's advance. Around him, scorched craters, melted street sections, cooling obsidian formations, the ruins of buildings that had been caught in the field's edge. Smoke rose from a dozen points. The air tasted like ash and copper, and the deep mineral tang of exposed stone. He was breathing hard. His left shoulder was still numb from All For One's hit. He had burns on 3 places, his right forearm, his left side, and the top of his right foot where lava had splashed too close. His bare feet were bleeding from running on shattered concrete. He pressed his palms to the ground, sent one pulse. Long, slow, deep. It traveled through the bedrock, through the city's foundations, through every street and building and tunnel for kilometers in every direction. Every heartbeat answered. His classmates, his teachers, the pro heroes, the civilians being evacuated, and 2 kilometers north in a medic station that was still standing. A kick drum rhythm. Steady. Alive, Izuku exhaled. Then he sat down. Right there, in the middle of the devastation, on the cooling stone, his legs folded, his palms on the ground, his bare feet pressed to the earth, he waited. Kirishima found him first. The redhead came sprinting through the rubble, his hardened skin covered in dust and small scratches, eyes wild. "Midoriya, is that lava?" He stared at the obsidian formations, at the cooling magma, at the transformed landscape. "Is that lava everywhere?" "Yeah, are you okay?" "I need shoes." Izuku looked down at his bleeding feet, and food, probably in that order. Kirishima stared at the scorched city block, the melted buildings, the obsidian dome at the center, the crater where All For One's body was still encased in stone 3 blocks south. "You did this," Kirishima said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "All of this, by yourself." "The earth helped. Midoriya." "Yes, Kirishima, I did this by myself." Izuku looked up at his friend. His milky green eyes caught the fading light. "I am the greatest earthbender in the world. We've established this." Kirishima sat down next to him. He put his face in his hands. He made a sound that was half laugh and half sob. "Bro," Kirishima said, "you just ended All For One. And Shigaraki. And Shigaraki. And most of this neighborhood, which I feel bad about. You feel bad about it? I'll fix it. Earth puts itself back together, just takes time." Kirishima stared at him. Then he leaned over and punched Izuku in his good shoulder. "You are the most insane person I have ever met in my life," Kirishima said, "and I love you like a brother." "That's touching. Can you carry me? I don't think I can walk." Kirishima carried him. The war was over. The counting began. The hero world reckoned with what it had become, what it had lost, what it owed. The Paranormal Liberation Front was broken. Its leadership imprisoned, its army scattered, its underground network collapsed literally and figuratively. All For One was entombed in stone on a city street, alive but immobilized, awaiting transfer to Tartarus. The obsidian dome containing Shigaraki's remains was cordoned off and classified. The cost was staggering. Entire city blocks leveled, infrastructure destroyed, heroes injured, some permanently, civilians displaced by the thousands, but nobody died, not a single civilian casualty. The Hero Coalition's defense, anchored by Izuku's barricades and terrain manipulation, had funneled the PLF away from populated areas. His lava fields, his stone walls, his metal barriers, all of them had been positioned to protect the evacuation zones. Even in the final fight, even at his most furious, he had never let the destruction reach the people he was fighting for. The media noticed. The Hero Public Safety Commission noticed. The world noticed. The news called him the Blind Bandit. It was not the first time, but this time it stuck. The name went viral. Fan art flooded the internet. A barefoot figure in a horse stance, stone rising around him, milky green eyes glowing in stylized portraits. Merchandise appeared in stores within a week. T-shirts, action figures, phone cases. A documentary crew began filming within a month. School children across the country made him their hero essay topic. His name appeared in textbooks before the school year ended. And a 5-year-old blind girl in Osaka, who had heard about him from a classmate who described the sports festival footage in detail, dictated a letter to her mother. The letter was transcribed in Braille and mailed to UIQ. Izuku received it 3 weeks after the war. He sat on the edge of his dorm room bed, feet on the floor, and ran his fingertips over the raised dots. Dear Blind Bandit, my name is Yuki. I am 5. I am blind like you. My friends say you are the strongest hero in the world. I didn't know blind people could be the best. My mom helped me write this. Thank you for being real. Love, Yuki. Izuku held the letter for a long time. His thumbs rested on the last line. His jaw worked. Jiro found him like that. She leaned in the doorway. Her jacks were healing, shorter than before but functional, wrapped in thin bandages. The bruise on her cheekbone had faded to yellow. Good letter? She asked. Mind your business, he said. His voice was not steady. She knew. She always knew. She crossed the room and sat beside him and did not ask to read it. She just pressed her shoulder against his and stayed. After a while, he folded the letter and put it in his pocket. He would carry it there for the next 15 years, through every mission, every battle, every quiet morning. The paper would wear thin. The braille would smooth. But the words would remain. I didn't know blind people could be the best. The months after the war were reconstruction of cities, of institutions, of the hero world itself. All for One was transferred to a new facility, deeper than Tartarus, built into a mountain range in northern Honshu. Izuku inspected the stone walls personally. He walked the perimeter barefoot, pressing his hands to every surface, reading every fault and fissure. The walls are adequate, he told Nezu. Then he pressed his palms flat and bent the metal reinforcement inside the walls, twisting the rebar into patterns so complex that even metal bending would struggle to undo them. Now they're adequate. Nezu watched with his beady, brilliant eyes. You don't trust the system to hold him. I trust the earth to hold him. The system is a bonus. UA restructured. Aizawa, who had spent 2 years watching Izuku operate and learning more from a 17-year-old student than he would ever admit, wrote a curriculum proposal that overhauled the hero course from the ground up. Out with quirk ranking, out with power scaling, in with real-world crisis response, ground-up ability training, and a focus on adaptation over raw strength. The next generation of heroes, Aizawa told the faculty board, needs to be measured by what they build, not what they break. He did not say Izuku's name. He did not need to. Class 1A graduated on a spring day that smelled like cherry blossoms and fresh paint. Izuku stood in the auditorium in his dress shoes, the only shoes he had worn in 14 years, and he took them off the moment the ceremony ended and accepted his diploma from Nezu. Congratulations, Midoriya, Nezu said. What comes next? Something nobody expects. His classmates dispersed into the hero world. Todoroki opened his own agency, small, independent, built on his own terms. He staffed it with rescued kids and reformed sidekicks. He did not take his father's name. He did not take his father's money. Izuku heard about it through the grapevine and felt Todoroki's heartbeat in a news clip. Steady, warm, resolved. The walls inside, half and half, were coming down. Slowly. But they were coming down. Kirishima joined a rescue-focused team in Osaka. Within a year, he was leading search and recovery operations in collapsed buildings, pulling survivors from rubble with his hardened arms and his boundless heart. He called Izuku every other week. "Bro, I pulled a family out of a collapsed apartment today. 3 kids, all alive. I thought of you. Because of the rubble, because you taught me that the strongest thing in any room is the ground. I listen to it now. Not like you, but I listen." Bakugo went to the #1 agency. Of course he did. He climbed the ranks like he was clawing through them. All aggression and explosive talent and the stubborn, furious refusal to be second best at anything. He never apologized to Izuku. He never acknowledged what had happened between them. But his heartbeat, which Izuku checked every few months through the ground across distances that should have been impossible, had changed. The desperate, frantic edge was gone, replaced by something quieter, something that sounded almost like acceptance. Uraraka went into disaster relief. Momo into support technology. Kaminari, impossibly, became a PR consultant for hero agencies and was reportedly excellent at it. Jiro stayed in the hero world. She sharpened her sonic abilities into a professional license. Her heartbeat fuzz evolved into a weapon and a rescue tool in equal measure. She worked crisis response, earthquakes, structural collapses, hostage situations where her ability to hear through walls and map interiors by sound made her invaluable. She was sharp. She was capable. She was building her own legacy. And she played music, not as a hobby, as a parallel career that she pursued with the same intensity she brought to hero work. She booked gigs, she recorded songs, she built a following that grew from hundreds to thousands to something significant. Her sound was distinctive, grounded, rhythmic, with a bass line that hummed through the floor and into the bones of everyone who listened. Izuku heard every performance. Not through speakers, through the vibrations her music made in the ground when she practiced at home. And Izuku did something nobody expected. He did not join an agency. He did not start a firm. He did not become the #1 hero. He taught. At 20 years old, he opened a small dojo in a residential neighborhood in Musutafu. No flashy sign, no advertising, no registration with the HPSC. Just a room with a dirt floor in a converted warehouse, a handful of flyers in local community centers, and a standing invitation for anyone who wanted to learn how to fight with what the earth gave them. People found it through word of mouth. The first class was 12 students, a girl with a stone skin quirk she hated, a boy who could sense vibrations but had never been taught to use it, a retired hero with a shattered knee, a middle school kid who had been told his earth manipulation quirk was too weak for hero work, a mother of 3 who wanted to learn self-defense, an older man who had never had a quirk and just wanted to feel strong. Izuku stood in front of them, barefoot, arms crossed, the same stance he had carried since he was 14 and insufferable. Who here thinks their quirk is useless? 3 hands went up. Good, you'll be fine. The hands wavered. Who here thinks their quirk is the best thing about them? 2 hands went up. You'll have to unlearn that. He crouched and pressed one palm to the dirt floor. The Earth is 400 million years old. It has survived volcanic eruptions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, and the entirety of human stupidity. It is patient. It endures. The first thing you're going to learn here is not how to fight. He stood. It is how to listen. He paused. 12 heartbeats, fast and uncertain, pulsing through the dirt floor beneath his bare feet. After that, he said, we'll see what kind of noise you can make. The dojo grew, not fast, steady, the way stone accrues. Students came and went. Some stayed for weeks, some stayed for years. Izuku taught them all the same way, feet on the ground, hands in the dirt, listening before moving. He was not gentle. He was not patient. He was Izuku Midoriya. And he pushed every student to the edge of what they thought they could do and then kicked them over it. But he never left them at the bottom. He was always there, waiting on the other side of the fall, barefoot on the earth, ready to tell them what they had learned. The ground caught you, he would say when a student fell and the earth rose to cushion them. It always catches you. That's the first lesson. Trust the fall. He did not advertise. He did not seek publicity. He ran the dojo and he did his hero work, and he came home to a ground floor apartment. His insistence, because bare feet on the earth was non-negotiable, Where Jiro was tuning her guitar or mixing a track or complaining about a chord progression that had been fighting her all day, they had moved in together a year after graduation. It was not a dramatic moment. There was no grand gesture. He had been spending every night at her place anyway, and one morning she had said, "Your toothbrush is already here, your clothes are in the closet, and you've literally reshaped the foundation of my building to improve the acoustics in my studio. Just move in." I thought I already had. You had. I'm making it official. Fine, but I'm redoing the bathroom. The tile work is criminal. He redid the bathroom with earthbending in 40 minutes. The new tile was cut from a single slab of marble he pulled from the earth beneath the building's foundation, and it fits so perfectly that a contractor who visited later stared at it for 10 minutes and asked who he should hire. Their life was real. They argued about dishes, about his habit of leaving pebbles on every surface, about her habit of playing bass at 3 a.m. when inspiration struck, about his refusal to wear shoes to formal events, about her insistence that he come to her gigs even though he could not see the stage. "I can feel the crowd's heartbeats," he told her before one show. "I can feel when they love you. I can feel when you hit the note that makes the whole room breathe together. I don't need to see it. You're doing the thing again." "What thing?" "The thing where you say something impossibly sweet and then pretend it was a factual observation." "It was a factual observation." She kissed him. He leaned into it. His hands found her waist. Her jacks curled against his neck. They laughed. They fought. They made dinner together. She cooked. He shaped the cutting board from a block of walnut using metal bending on the nails and earth bending on the wood and pure stubbornness for the rest. They fell asleep on the couch watching movies she described to him in whispered narration that was more entertaining than the films themselves. He memorized every new song she wrote by the vibration it made through the floor. He built her a recording studio in the second bedroom, soundproofed walls, acoustically tuned stone paneling, a floor that resonated at her preferred frequency because he had tested every option until the vibration matched the one that made her jacks bounce. She read his body the way he read the earth, by feel, by rhythm, by the shifts in his presence that told her what he was thinking before he said it. She learned his tells, the jaw clench when he was angry, the head tilt when he was listening to something far away, the specific way his shoulders dropped when he was tired, and the way his feet pressed into the ground a little harder when he was worried. He did not always tell her what was wrong. She did not always ask. Sometimes they just sat on the floor together, her back against his chest, her jacks resting on his collarbones, and let the silence do the work. It was not a perfect life. It was a grounded one, and grounded was everything. The hero career of the blind bandit was not flashy. It was not the kind of career that generated headlines every week or topped the hero rankings. It was the kind of career that saved lives. He took cases nobody else could solve. A collapsed mine in Hokkaido, 17 miners trapped 400 meters down, beyond the reach of any drilling equipment, in a pocket of air that was shrinking by the hour. Izuku arrived barefoot, pressed his palms to the ground, and mapped the entire mine shaft in 3 seconds. He bent the stone around the collapse, opening a passage wide enough for a man to crawl through, and held it open for 6 hours while rescue crews extracted every miner. "How did you know where they were?" a reporter asked. "I could feel their heartbeats through the stone." From 400 meters down? From anywhere. An underground criminal network operating beneath Tokyo, a quirk trafficking ring that used a subterranean base accessible only through a series of concealed tunnels. The police had been trying to locate it for months. Izuku walked barefoot through the streets of Shinjuku for 20 minutes, stopped on a random corner, and told the detective standing next to him the exact address, the number of people inside, which ones were armed, and which structural walls to avoid hitting during the raid because they were load-bearing. The raid took 7 minutes. Every person inside was captured. No shots fired, a structural disaster in Osaka, a high-rise residential building whose foundation had been undermined by an underground water main break. The building was listing 3 degrees and accelerating, 400 residents trapped above the failure point, unable to evacuate because the stairwells had buckled. Izuku arrived in 20 minutes by train. He pressed both palms to the sidewalk outside the building and bent the rebar inside its foundation, twisting the reinforcement into new patterns, creating additional support structures within the walls, shoring up the failing points from the inside out. The building straightened, the stairwells reopened, 400 people evacuated in an hour. He did not appear on the evening news. The structural engineering firm that assessed the building afterward did. They called it a miracle of engineering. They did not mention the barefoot man who had been standing outside the building for 30 minutes with his palms on the ground. Izuku did not care. The point was never the credit. The point was the ground. The point was the heartbeats. He was not the most famous hero. He was the most effective. There was a difference, and he knew it, and he preferred it. Years passed. Izuku turned 25, 27, 30. His body remained what the earth had made it, lean, dense, wiry. His milky green eyes never changed. His feet were always bare, always on the ground, always listening. His hair was still wild, still going in every direction because he still could not see it and still did not care. Jiro cut her hair shorter, let it grow back, cut it again. She cycled through phases of music, punk, then acoustic, then electronic, then back to punk. She released 3 albums, each one better than the last, each one carrying a bass line that Izuku could feel from any room in the apartment. She continued hero work, part-time, crisis response, consulting, the kind of work that used her sound mapping abilities to find people in the wreckage of the world's worst days. They got married on a Saturday, small ceremony, the garden behind the dojo, dirt floor, bare feet. The guest list was 30 people. Class 1A, his mother, who cried for 3 hours straight, Granite, who gave a speech about patience and the earth and made everyone cry, and a 5-year-old blind girl from Osaka named Yuki, who had been writing letters to Izuku for 3 years and was serving as the flower girl. Yuki scattered the petals barefoot because Izuku had taught her to feel the ground on her first visit to the dojo, and she had not worn shoes since. The vows were simple. Jiro spoke first. She said things that made the crowd laugh and things that made the crowd cry, and she said them in her own voice. Clear, sharp, real. Izuku spoke second. He kept it short. Kyoka, he said, you are the only heartbeat in this world I would rearrange my path for. I did it the first day we met. I'll do it every day after. He squeezed her hands. Stick with me. It only gets better from here. She was crying and laughing at the same time, which was, he told her, a skill she had inherited from his mother. She punched his arm at the altar, and at Trevede, the crowd lost it. The years after were full, in the way that good lives are full. Not good lives are full, not with drama or disaster, but with the accumulation of small, real, irreplaceable moments. A Sunday morning where Jiro played a song she'd been working on for 6 months, and Izuku felt the vibration through the apartment floor and told her it was the best thing she had ever written. And he meant it, and she knew he meant it because his heartbeat did not lie. A Wednesday evening where Izuku came home from the dojo with dirt on his hands and a story about a student who had moved a pebble for the first time and cried. A rainy afternoon where they sat on the couch and did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Her feet on his lap, his hand on her ankle, the rain on the roof, the earth humming beneath them. And then, the morning that changed everything again. Izuku was 32. Jiro was the same age. They were standing in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and new things. Jiro was holding a baby. A girl, tiny, perfect, screaming the way all babies scream, loud and furious and absolutely certain that the world owed her an explanation. Izuku stood beside the bed. His hand was on Jiro's arm. His feet were on the hospital floor, and through the linoleum and the concrete and the foundation beneath, he could feel every heartbeat in the building, every nurse, every doctor, every patient, and one new heartbeat. Small, fast, fierce. She's loud. Izuku's ours, Jiro said. Her voice was wrecked with exhaustion and joy. He leaned down, pressed his forehead to the baby's head, felt the tiny pulse through the contact. Hey, he whispered, welcome to the world. It's a mess, but the ground is solid. I'll make sure of that. They named her Rei. She had her mother's sharp eyes and her father's total absence of self-doubt. She also had her father's milky green eyes, which they noticed in the first week and which the doctor confirmed, blind. Like her father, Jiro held Izuku's hand when the doctor said it. His hand did not shake. His heartbeat did not change. She'll be fine. he said, and he meant it in a way that went deeper than words, because he had been born the same way and he had turned it into the most powerful thing on the planet. 2 years later, a boy. They named him Haru. He had his mother's ear for sound and his father's tendency to press his hand to the floor when he was thinking. His eyes were a deep purple, like Jiro's, and they saw just fine. The family settled into the ground floor apartment like roots settling into soil. Izuku expanded the basement training area into a proper space. Bedrock floor, stone walls, a room where the earth spoke clearly and he could teach his children to listen. Rei started walking barefoot at 11 months. She refused shoes from the beginning, which her mother accepted, with a resignation that suggested she had married into this and knew what she was getting. At 3, Rei pressed her palm to the garden wall and tilted her head. "Papa," she said, "the wall is humming." Izuku crouched beside her, pressed his own palm to the wall. "It hums because the ground is talking through it," he said. "The wall is connected to the foundation. The foundation is connected to the earth. Everything is connected." "What's it saying?" "Right now, it's saying the plumbing in the kitchen needs fixing," she laughed. It was his laugh, sharp, sudden, and delighted by things nobody else found funny. Haru was quieter. He sat in corners and listened. Not to conversations, to vibrations. He would press his ear to the floor and close his eyes and stay there for minutes at a time, processing something only he could hear. Jiro watched him and saw herself, the girl who used to plug her jacks into the walls of her childhood home and listen to the building breathe. They did not push either child toward anything. They did not need to. The pull was in their blood. And one morning, a weekend morning, which meant the dojo was closed, which meant the house was loud with the particular chaos of 2 children who had inherited their father's energy and their mother's stubbornness, the pull became something more. Rei was 7. Haru was 5. Both of them had been barefoot in the garden for the past hour, feet pressing into the soil, heads tilted. Izuku stood in the doorway. He could feel their tiny footsteps through the wooden floor. The weight of them, the way they shifted, pressed, adjusted. They were listening, both of them, in the way he had taught them to listen, not with their ears, but with everything else. Jiro came up beside him with 2 cups of coffee. Her jacks rested against her collarbones. Her hair was shorter again, a recent cut, sharp on the sides. She looked at the garden and then at him. "They've been doing that for an hour," she said, "I know." His feet were on the wooden threshold. He could feel every vibration the children made, the way Rei rocked forward on her toes and pressed deeper, the way Haru's small hand was flat on the dirt, fingers spread, motionless. They're feeling it. Feeling what? He took the coffee, sipped it, set it on the doorframe. Everything. Rei looked up. Her milky green eyes, identical to his, aimed at the world the same way, seeing nothing and knowing everything. Found him across the garden with a focus that had nothing to do with sight. "Papa," she called. "The garden says something." He set his coffee down. He walked into the garden, bare feet on the grass. The soil was damp from morning dew, and it spoke to him the way it had spoken to him for 28 years, in vibrations, in pressure, in the ancient language of the planet. He crouched between his children, pressed both palms to the earth. "What does it say?" Haru asked. His voice was small and serious. "Put your feet flat," Izuku said. "Both of you. Flat on the ground. Close your eyes." They did. Rei's milky eyes shut, Haru's purple ones closed. "Now stop listening with your ears." He waited. The morning air was still. A bird called from the fence. The city hummed 2 kilometers away. Jiro watched from the doorway, her coffee growing cold, her expression soft in a way she reserved for moments she wanted to remember forever, and start listening with everything else. Silence. The garden held its breath. Then Rei's breath caught. A small gasp, the sound of a child discovering a room she did not know existed inside her own house. "I feel it," she whispered. "I feel. It's breathing. The ground is breathing." "It is," Izuku said. "It has been breathing since before any of us were born. It will keep breathing long after we're gone." Haru's eyes opened, wide, full of something that looked like wonder but ran deeper. The recognition of a truth he had always suspected but never been able to name. Izuku put one hand on each of their shoulders. "That is what you're made of," he said. "Both of you. The same thing the earth is made of. And one day, when you're ready, I'll teach you how to talk back to it." Haru looked up at him. Are we going to be like you, Papa? Izuku was quiet. He pressed his palms into the grass, felt the planet's pulse, the same pulse he had been reading since he was 4 years old, and furious, pressing his palms into the dirt of a ruined playground while a boy with explosions in his hands told him he was nothing. The pulse was steady, strong, patient. The same rhythm it had carried for 400 million years. You're going to be better, he said. Jiro brought his coffee out and set it on the garden wall. She watched him. This man, her man, crouched in the dirt with their children on a weekend morning, his bare feet in the grass, his cloudy green eyes aimed at the faces he could not see but knew by heart. She sat on the garden wall. Her jacks rested against her collarbones. She tucked one foot beneath her and let the other dangle, her toes brushing the grass. You know, she said, for the greatest earthbender in the world, you're a pretty decent dad. He looked up. His eyes found her face the way they always did, not by sight but by gravity, by frequency, by the pull of the one heartbeat he had rearranged his entire path for since he was 15 years old on a staircase at UA. He smiled, the specific smile. The one he had for her and the earth and the moments between. Stick with me, Kyoka, he said. It only gets better from here. She laughed, warm and quiet against the morning air. Her jacks bounced. Rei pressed her palms deeper into the dirt. Haru placed both hands flat on the ground beside his father's. The earth hummed beneath them. 3 sets of hands and 4 sets of feet, connected to the same ancient stone, the same patient bedrock, the same pulse that had been beating since before heroes, before quirks, before anything that walked or spoke or dreamed. The ground held them, the way it always did, the way it always would, steady, strong, home.
The hero roster. A massive salute to the legends backing this journey. Your support is what keeps the momentum at an all-time high and the dream moving forward. You guys are the absolute best. Pro heroes. The elite front line. Stepping up and setting the pace for the whole community. DA. Fire 05. Symbol of peace. The pillars of the community. The titans who keep our foundation solid and the hype at an all-time high. Alex Morgan, Ray Various, Blaze, that other guy too, Chad Reynolds, Zachariah Allison, Tamaki 68 Rimuru, Kelvin Bowman, Mr. Panda, Azatros, Dweller of the Deepest Depths, Damian Leon, Jacob Rops, Christian Mullins, Bully Maguire Shadow, Neostar Productions, Assail Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Thunder, Sunwind 631, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddie Rose, Omega, Akuma no Akami, Chris Talley, Remorsefuls, Black Vein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK8er, Corey Tokars, Quan Yen Thompson, Yon, Devin Black, Crow, Dasher Games, Joe Bruce, Ray Von Crimson River, Dante Allister, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Howie 60, Ignacio.
Hope of the universe, the ultimate guardians, celestial tiers supporters whose impact literally shines across the galaxy. Noroi Uzumaki Uchiha, Keishan, Coldbane 4, The Maniac 563, Sean Brooks, Debs, L.S. Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, I Shoot X50, Greg Green, James, Quanyen Thompson, Juan, and Zeno KJ.
That was the complete story of the Blind Bandit. If this hit different, and you know it did, drop a like, subscribe, and comment your favorite moment below. More insane what-if stories dropping soon. Stay grounded.